Are we there?
We're live. We
Are
are live.
Live.
Welcome, guys.
Hey, y'all. It is time, Thursday, the first Thursday night edition of the show at Fish North, Georgia. We got a great panel for you tonight. Awesome show. We're going to talk a little bit about big fish. We're going to talk a little bit about big baits. We're going to talk a little bit about some tactics that you can kind of put in your pocket and take with you on the road when you go somewhere new and you decide you want to catch a new species, tick something off the bucket list. I think we're going to have a lot in store and a lot to offer tonight. We've got an awesome panel. To my left, we have Phil Hutcheson.
Good evening, everyone.
And to my right, I have the green team, Alex and Jessica Green. Go ahead.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
So they're everyone here is, except for me, pretty much is an accomplished angler. We have a lot of experience here: trout, stripers, muskie, bass,
Multiple species.
species, anything you could want. We got the smorgasbord.
Hey, we
And
got drum. Now we
Yeah,
got
Alex added drum to
and
the
buffalo.
list.
Drunk and Sauger.
Yeah.
So-
That one was
Walleye.
cool. Sauger on a shaky head. That
Yep.
was rad.
So we're going deep down the rabbit hole. Before we get started with that, though, as always, Show of Fish North Georgia is brought to you by Chase Epley and Cassidy State Farm Agency. They're sponsor numero uno for us. Give them a call, 678-779-7269. Ask them about the personal article policy to protect any of your gear on the boat, rods, reels, sonars, things that may not be covered by warranty, subject to breakage. Someone comes and takes your sonar off your boat. If you got that policy, you've got some protection. So again, that number is 678-779-7269. Or you can reach him, Chase, at CassidySF.com. And we are very happy for all they do for us, keeping us on the air. And then we'd also like to introduce our newest sponsor. You know you're big time when you have the beer sponsor, Nofo Brew Co.
It's good,
61
too.
6150 Highway 400 North, just past Cumming before you get to the outlet mall, providing us with some delicious beverages this evening. And we're happy to have them on board, and we're happy to see what we can do for them. So I think
some good flavored stuff too.
it is
Oh, that
tasty.
Kolsch is good.
Yeah.
It is tasty.
It's a Kolsch.
I'm not usually
Can't
not
go
that
wrong
much
with
of a
this
fan of
Kolsch.
Kolsch's either.
Yeah.
It's
So
good.
kind of the genesis for our show tonight. Topic one, I think we're gonna dive right in. We were talking earlier about how in the beginning of the year, January 1, inevitably out there on the social medias, there is a post that says, it's January 1st. What's your New Year's fishing resolution? And all of us inevitably say, I'm going to catch a new PB. I'm going to catch a new species. I'm going to go out and do something I've never done before. And a week later, we're shrugging our shoulders and looking around and going, okay, now what? And we load up and we go to Lanier, or we go to the Hooch, or we go somewhere familiar, and kind of that bucket list fish falls by the wayside. And we want to give you guys some tools in the toolbox that can help you kind of make that dream a reality. So we're going to start kind of first things first. We're going to say the word mentality a lot tonight. We're going to start just with big fish in general. Like if you want to catch your PB, kind of what does it take? What makes that fish special? What can you do to kind of get him in your hands, get him out of your head and into your hands? So with that, Phil, we'll start with you. What makes, and we'll just lob up a softball, what makes a big fish different from an average fish?
Well, it really comes down to, can you outsmart the fish at that point? Because a big fish is going to be a big fish, not through luck. Like, nature's not kind. It doesn't give participation trophies. If there is a fish out there and it wants to be the alpha, it's going to have to figure out ways to survive and ambush other things to outlive everything else. So that's really, for me, what it comes down to is being able to trick and outsmart the fish in a lot of ways. And that's something that I didn't think about was really a big key of it until fishing with this guy over here, actually, because that's something that you kind of pick up, learning how going for big fish differs from just catching average stockers or going up to Lanier and catching 2-pound bass. It's a different approach. It has to be.
So that you're next, Mr. Green.
I think one of the smartest and most enjoyable guys that I follow actually on Instagram is Shannon Gorman. I love hearing
I love
so
Shannon's
much
stuff.
of what he has
Yeah.
to say
Yep.
and the
He's good.
information that he provides. And I wish people would really give him a follow and internalize everything he says. Because no matter whether it's bass in a pond or it's muskie, somewhere up in the mountains that we're fishing for a fish to get truly big, he can't miss his whole life. He really can't. He's got to grow at an optimal rate in a prime ambush spot in the best habitat, the best water conditions that you can possibly find for that species. And luckily around here, we've got a lot of it within 3 to 4 hours in pretty much
Absolutely,
every direction.
Every direction.
And they just operate on a different level. Like, you guys see that person at work that just unconsciously gets everything done. And it's like they don't break a sweat. There's fish like that too. And they don't screw up. So it's having your equipment in order and being mentally prepared to
Put the
see that
hours in.
thing come
Yeah.
the heck up off the bottom and make you freak out.
Yep.
And you have to
Not
be
freak
cool
out.
with that in the moment. Oh, I
Right.
still freak out.
It's something that's very odd too. That's something we'll have to bring up here in a little while, is because for me, when I hook into a big fish, things snap and switch, and it's almost like I'm in a dream state. Even after the fish is caught, that's just the feeling that it feels like, is this really happening? But then everything goes, and some of the time you get the fish in the net.
Yeah.
Some of the time they shake off. It is what it is. So, Jess, what about you though? What you think
So
about
kind
that?
of touching base on the aspect of mentality and mindset, I would say when it comes to targeting bigger fish, one of the most important things is to realize that you're going to fail, and you have to be okay with failing. You have to be okay with not catching any fish at all, because you're going after something that most people don't catch. And it's pretty much that mindset of zero or hero. You're going to spend the hours, you're going to spend the time, and you're going to be disappointed a whole lot. But the one time that it actually does happen, everything comes together, everything that you put in makes sense, and it all becomes worth it. And then after that moment, it just makes you want to keep going back for more, and it's over from there.
It's that high.
It is.
I think that's
It is.
I think that's an interesting thing to bring up. Is I think we as anglers tend to discount just how many like truly big, just giant fish there are out there, right? Like we catch a big fish somewhere, oh, this place must be loaded with them, right? And it's hard to kind of come to terms with how few there are,
Yes.
and how special that big fish like really could be like in his domain.
Yeah. That could be the alpha, and there couldn't be anything else bigger than it potentially.
That could be it. Yeah.
So
Oh, do you see that with the big muskies? Like you see that like you do with no other fish. They come up and they just don't care at all.
well, there's
Like,
yeah.
at all. You know,
So
you'll drift like 300 yards downriver figure eighting these things, and they'll follow you 1,200 feet, just doing circles on the side of the boat.
Yes, what that guy said. Big fish is better than any drug. Amen, brother.
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed. Very, very true. It's funny too, because just like you're saying to that point with the muskie, there's videos of Scott Martin, I think it was from last year or 2019, where he's fishing up in New York, and dude's fishing I think he's fishing a drop shot on like 6 or 8 pound test and hooks into like a 45, 50 inch muskie and catches it.
See, that happens.
Yeah.
That happens.
But like going back to what Jess said and going back to your initial point, like what stops you from just hooking up and going to Lanier? Which is really hard because Lanier's awesome.
Lanier's a good
When-
fisher.
like
Oh, yeah.
We discussed this upstairs, like how spoiled for choice we are in Georgia. Like
Yes.
it's hard to tear yourself away from your home fishery along a lot of the time. Like,
Yeah.
you know where to go, you know what's up. Like if it's a good lake, like
You're gonna fish it.
yeah. Well, it was one of the greatest like fishing maxims, right? Like you don't leave them to find them.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but at some
Um,
point, if you're going to go out on a limb, like you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be okay with, and we've done it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
spending a couple $100 on gas, a hotel room, and driving to some place
The middle of nowhere.
like nowhere, absolutely nowhere, on a dirt path, boat ramp that isn't on a map and no one can find. We somehow tracked through 20 years of Google Maps to find it. One year they took a picture in the winter with no leaves, and you can see the little thing right next to the bridge, and you fail.
You think
a lot.
you think we can get the boat in there?
We can get it in there.
Yeah.
And see, touching on the point of the whole Google Maps thing, we were talking about this earlier, is don't be afraid to open up Google Maps and explore the map and look at areas you've never even seen before and just go for it.
Yeah.
You might fail, but you always learn.
Well, especially with the maps, to expand on that, when you learn how to use the satellite view versus the map view, because with map view, it's going to help you figure out where all the waterways are. But the satellite view, that's where you're going to really be able to figure out road access, boat ramps, if there's fishable structure in the water that you can see above water, if the water is typically clear or not. Again, just like Alex mentioned, when you check the various photos from different times a year, you might see pictures that have clear water, and then you might see pictures that have just yoo-hoo colored mud water. So hopefully those clear pictures, you can see some structure underwater potentially. It's a good way to get ahead
and
and
see what time of year those were taken too, can't you?
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's usually when
Yep.
it's listed, especially on just like Justin Spees is saying, Google Earth actually does have a archive timeline that you can usually select.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
For a hot minute, I don't know if you look up Lula Bridge on Lanier, you can see me.
Oh,
Really?
no way.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
The kayak is out there floating around.
I mean, that's pretty viewed. You should license that. Like, holler at Google. Like, come on,
Royalty
guys.
fees.
Free
Yeah.
AdWords. Free AdWords. Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah,
You nailed it, Pork Taco. Thing is so useful.
So, to that, like you were talking about going muskie. I know that was your big project last year. Was the muskie?
Yeah,
fishing.
really. The last 2
These
years,
last two?
people didn't see like the crippling failure in freezing temperatures for
Oh, yeah.
13 days on end.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
First trip we went up, I
So
blew
it's
the
like,
net
what
job
was,
on her.
What
in
was
like 10 minutes.
genesis for that though? Like, do you just wake up one morning, you're like, I'm bored of giant trout. What's bigger and meaner, or was it just kind of you saw an in fisherman and you wanted to do it, or?
I can't remember. And maybe it was like Blaine Chocolate, or maybe it was even like Wes McElroy, I think. So someone here, I forget who it was, had gone and gotten one. And I saw the set of jaws on that thing and the set of hardware on that thing,
Mhm.
and just said, I gotta go.
Gotta get one in the net.
I gotta go get
I
one.
need one of those
Gotta
now.
get one in the net.
And it was really important to me to get it without going on a guide trip, and to go through the whole journey and experience
Of
of
learning
failure
water.
to get that fish.
That's
And
right.
that's what made it so special.
That's right.
She got one way before I did.
Yeah.
I blew a net job on her first one, the first trip.
Like
Well, if-
freaking 15 minutes into our trip.
I was going to say, if I remember correctly, Jess caught one, and then Jonathan Mills caught one, and then finally you got one, right?
Yeah, I got two people muskie off
On
the
their
front of my
first.
boat. Oh, and it wasn't for lack of eats.
No, it's just how the stars aligned.
It was like it was like honestly the suffering I guess I needed for that fish, because it was 3, 4, 5, like by muskie standards in terms of eats and seeing fish, they were incredible fishing days. But I just kept blowing hook sets, and it was because I thought that bass people were smarter than everyone else with these hooks and tapers and all this stuff, and realized the $100, the $150 swim baits and stuff like that, and the super tapered rods, it's not the deal. I mean, you got
Simple. Muskie is
this
simple.
dumb brick of plastic. It's $19. Has had more muskie eats than anything I've ever thrown.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
that's
wild.
that's injection
And that's-
molded plastic, guys. I mean, there's
And
nothing,
smallmouth eat that? Like
Yeah.
I've caught smallmouth
No
on it,
way.
largemouth
Yeah.
on it.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
No way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
No
I could see a
problem.
largemouth eating this, no problem.
Yeah.
Like a smallie, do they really try to eat it, or
they
try to
they
kill it?
schwack
Oh,
it.
they'll eat it. Yeah.
They
Just, like,
eat it.
whack it.
murder it.
I mean, you
That's
got to
awesome.
think like a little perch.
I mean, that's
If
about
it-
that size.
Or
Which
if
that's
it
what that
calls-
is. Yeah.
I mean, you catch these spots on Lanier, they got a belly out here. I mean, you roll up a little 8-inch perch in their belly. It's not,
Yeah, no,
that's nothing
That's fair.
for 'em.
Mhm.
And that's the thing with the bigger lures where people are intimidated is they eat fish this size all the time.
They have to. They
Yeah.
make a choice to.
Yeah, exactly. And as Alex has stated before, and he can go into more detail, is the bigger fish are calorie calculators. So if they can find a bigger meal, that's what they're going to go after.
And I also think a lot of people are intimidated by it because it, to a certain degree, they think it's hyper expensive to get into it. And that's what you see on social media. You see $100, $150 custom glide baits. You know, you don't need to do that to get into throwing a larger profile for a larger fish. Like, you can do some of this stuff with 8-10-inch flukes, Sabiles, like things that just occupy that profile that you don't need specialized equipment for, that, you know, you can go get your feet wet at it and decide, is it something I want to do to not catch a fish, you know, for 4 trips and then, you know, oh, well, it's a 25 pounder. Like, okay. And that's worth it for us, you know.
And just for an example too, like the Sabiles, we're talking the 7 to 9 inch Sabiles like that. That's a $14 to $17 lure. Yeah, you can find them for that
in swim bait terms,
and they're available. You can buy them off the shelf.
They're plentiful.
You know, and
they're effective.
Yeah, it may be a Honda Civic versus, you know, a Corvette in some respects, but it still gets it done, and it accomplishes the task of getting your feet wet at that.
Exactly.
Without going way out there.
So would you recommend that, or did you dive in, or did you dip the toe?
No, I mean, there are a couple of, you know, first of all, there are a ton of OG swim bait folks that you've never heard about in Georgia that were doing all of this stuff 15, 20 years before I was at like the genesis of this, you know, Mike Buka, the HPH, you know, guys that have decades on me in this. But yeah, for me, a lot of it was Phil, and there's another guy, Jerry Gabbert, who did some very off the wall stuff and caught some really cool fish.
Yes, he did.
Some stuff that'll never see the light of day. He's a really cool tinkering mind, but it was slowly working our way up. You know, we started with Sabiles and, you know, all sorts of
large
random flukes and
And what kind of tackle do you need for that?
7'6" bait. You're flipping stick.
Okay.
7'6" bait caster. Preferably something with a little, if it's a treble hook bait, preferably something with a little bit more parabolic bends. You know, keep them pinned and you kind of launch it. Or, you know, you guys that are launching top waters on linear with like 7'6" bait casters, that's
perfectly fine.
Perfect rod for throwing, you know,
those kind of entry level
lure.
Most definitely.
For the beginning.
Or like you and your favorite one.
Which is?
The old G-Rat.
Oh, yes. So I will say, you know, as far as intro to glide baits go, especially for female anglers or those of you that are intimidated by throwing something larger, one of the first lures that I used going into glide bait fishing was a G-Rat, a Sneaky Pete. And they're a great company, great guy. And I have caught some of my largest fish on the G-Rat Sneaky Pete. Oh, Alex brought it for us today. So this has been a absolute slayer. It's very lightweight. I mean, it's not even 2 ounces, y'all. I mean, there's no excuses for you guys not to be able to throw this. And this has seen some action. This and the rainbow trout color one as well. But I mean, you know, if you want to start with something lighter, that's definitely a good go-to. You know, work with it and experiment with it. It's a lot different of a lure to throw than any bass lure that you're used to. You're going to have to get used to a different kind of rhythm and figure it out. I mean, they want a different rhythm than most other lures, but you also have to find your own style in it too and be comfortable in figuring that out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's like
so
those
I was gonna say I'll dive in on it.
I was gonna say that. I mean,
I've seen your box. You got a couple of them in there.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
They're floating around.
They're really good. And you know what a lot of the people will not realize about these necessarily is if you actually take these, like the Sneaky Pete, for example, and compare it to some of these other lures that are out there. I mean, you can even look at, it's very common, just for example.
That's
like,
a big herring profile.
It's a very big herring profile.
If you had really like jointed herring in your lake, like that's,
you know, and
lives.
Bent treble hooks too. So you can tell this one's getting worked a good bit. But the thing is you can actually go and look at some of these other manufacturers of glide baits. Doesn't matter from what country. And you can tell in some of them where they're styling after or who they're kind of designing towards. And this, I mean, I've got one, I think, in that color. And I'm not going to deny it. I definitely,
what is that color?
the IU.
Yeah.
IU Sneaky Pete.
Started out as IU.
That is a result of what she freaking caught on this thing because it's so useful in so many different ways.
And it's a nice snackable profile.
Yeah.
And it's good price point too. It's $35, you guys.
Mhm.
So
that was attractive to me when I started building the glide bait box. I was like, it's $50 is about the ceiling.
That's
right?
the capper.
And we'll see. You don't want to go too big either. Like I was conscious of that as well. Like with profile, you don't want to go ham out of the box and just have zero success because that's a good way to get discouraged.
Actually,
and just be like, I threw this 10-inch bait and nothing happened. And,
Well,
It depends. I think it's different for different people. Like I'm an obsessive.
you got to make it happen.
Yeah, it was. I've always thrown large profile
Yes.
baits,
This
just
is true.
overall generally. And there was one time I was on the upper Chattahoochee, and these things had never seen a trout, and I was throwing a trout profile bait, and I watched it come, 40 yards to smack it, and I was like, okay, it's over. But deep
that's a
down
big
in my
change.
head, I knew it would work because one of the things that got me addicted to fishing when I was younger was fishing a big canoe. And my dad and I would go catch trout, right? And they got the big rip wrap on the dam. So we cut the trout loose. You're not supposed to release them there, but we cut them all loose so we could keep catching them. This like 15-pound bass comes up and just absolutely obliterates right at my feet. Just swims off with a very tiny tip of its tail sticking out like a cigar. Just gone.
That's kind of image that hangs with you, right?
Yeah.
So it works. You just have to fight through it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This is something we mentioned last week. They don't know where they live. Like fish, we don't want to personify fish too much, right? Like they don't know where they live. They can't name all the bait fish that they eat, right? What they can do is look at a bait and say, hey, that's easy to eat. I'm going to eat that. And when you show them like trout colors and it doesn't have trout,
They don't care.
it's just another bait fish going by. That's an
They're
easy meal.
hardwired to eat trout.
Yeah.
I swear.
Yeah.
Fish are hardwired to eat trout.
Really? Even other trout?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Especially
Oh,
other
yeah.
trout.
Especially other
Yeah.
trout. Especially other
Yes,
trout.
they are cannibalistic. There's no other word for it.
Oh, for sure.
So
Alex, you want to talk about striper?
Actually, I want to talk about something that Randy said. Do you upsize the hooks on your glide baits? One thing I think a lot of people get frustrated with is just like jerk baits. They're a very finely balanced bait in terms of weighting. And if you change your hooks and alter the weighting, you can mess with the action of the bait significantly. So I actually carry lead fly tying wire and heat shrink tubing with me in my box, so I can adjust up and down the weight on either one, pull the nose down a little bit. If it's nosing up, I can pull the tail up a little bit and just alter that just based on what they're doing. Because I like them so that I can take them apart and twist the joints and tune them.
I was like really mess with.
Oh, I really mess with them.
he
Yeah,
does.
like I take them
add,
apart,
remove,
reweight them, drill
rings,
them.
try different hook
Weighs the
combinations.
hooks, puts heavier hooks on the
Yeah.
front or the back, depending on the lure.
So like that is one reason I don't mind sharing sometimes with people, because even if you have the same bait as me, you do not necessarily.
There are layers.
It's
right?
doing completely different things
Yes.
than what the stock bait is going to be doing.
So I think there's John Allred's here. You got a good basic question about the sneaky. We got the beer, Blake.
Balake.
What do you use with the sneaky?
You line a knot. I mean, everyone's got their preference. So I mean, we might rapid fire
What
that
line
and just go
and
around the
knot?
table.
Well-
Yeah, rapid fire that one.
Yeah, I mean, we could open a can of worms with this one, but as far as glide baits in general go, I mean, sometimes wire leader is a good idea. For something
Really?
this light,
Mm-hmm.
you could even use wire leader. You do a lot of braid to fluoro, and that's also a great option. I mean, you can tie any knot you're comfortable with, and in Alberto, Alex likes to tie an FG knot. I'm
Masochist.
still learning the FG.
I
It's
know.
pretty
I'm taking it a step further
Um,
this year.
But yes, knots are very important, and
So-
snaps. We've actually had some issues with snaps lately. So make sure
Yep.
you find a snap that you trust, or don't use one at all.
Split ring.
Yeah.
Just split
Split
ring
ring.
it.
Split
Yep.
So what do you tie? Like, are you a braid to leader? And what are your knots?
I honestly just tie an Alberta knot.
You're in Alberto, and then
And-
what's your lure? What's your terminal knot? Are you a clinch or
I just-
a jam?
clinch.
Or
Just
is it a
clinch it up. Yep.
Alex, You're in-
Actually, y'all are gonna laugh. I fish generally so fast with glide baits that I fish straight 80-pound braid.
Yeah.
No leaders, nothing.
hmm
Just
Yeah.
straight 80.
that's a
And
bold statement. I like that.
I mean,
there's absolutely
well, it's moving so quick they don't have a.
Yeah,
they're just reacting, right?
I mean,
don't
they
have a chance
don't
to look at
see
it.
they don't see a 4-aught hook hanging off
No.
of it.
No.
I mean, and I'm generally fishing extremely fast,
Well,
so
So,
and you
I've
think-
noticed no difference.
Yeah, and if you think about it too, you have a lot of fly guys that are throwing for muskie, for trout, for striper. Their leaders are not long because they're using a sink tip line.
Mhm.
If they have a long leader, it would affect the sink rate of it. So you're looking at a 3 to 5 foot leader. So while it's some fish are going to be very line shy, but it's very, very specific conditions. A lot of the stuff
Mhm.
we run into and where we fish, maybe clear water, but you could still easily utilize, like Alex is saying, braid with no issue. You know,
I'm gin clear.
Yeah.
Smack it.
Yep,
Mhm.
they will
are you
come up and-
Alex? Are you a faster is better guy? Like, do you
Faster
start fast
with
and slow down, or you start slow
it's
and speed up?
well, Blake's kind of asking
Yeah,
that
that was
right
a good
now.
question.
And the reason I've really fished fast mostly, and with a few well-timed hesitations, is wet bait fish slows down when
Mhm.
he's getting chased
Chased.
by a 30-pound striper of certain depth.
yeah.
Mhm.
You know, and there's certain times you need to hesitate within a retrieve. You know, if you've ever seen a striper chase a gizzard shad, there's a moment where that gizzard shad stops and says, "Oh
Where do I
crap, I'm
go?"
gonna die. Which
Yep.
way? Which way?" And he hesitates.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then he gets to another spot where the angles of the point or the angles of the river break change, and he has another decision to make. Do I go up, down, left, to the right? And it's more about working a bait quickly into those angles if I'm up high in the water column. If I'm low in the water column, I generally slow down significantly.
Mhm.
And she's better than me at that.
And it does depend on the time of year, how fast the water's flowing. When you're retrieving a glide bait, I see Tyler says, "How fast do you fish glide baits?" I mean, it depends. So it depends on how clear the water is, how fast the water is flowing. You know, the angle that you're approaching it at. Are you casting it up to a sandy bank or a rocky point, or are you pulling it over deep water? And you know, with the glide bait, you do a lot of half turn retrieves. And you can speed it up and then pause it, as Alex was saying, is calculated hesitations. And you kind of just have to read the fish and kind of understand the mindset of the big fish that you're targeting when you're doing that retrieve.
Yeah, I mean, when asking how fast you would fish a glide bait, it's like really such a general question. I would ask, what species are you fishing for?
Yeah.
Yeah, most
You know, if
definitely.
it's I tend to fish far faster when I'm fishing for a schooling fish like a spot or a striper. You know, they tend to want it taken away from them, and if you slow down, you die.
Yeah.
Like that's when they just fade off and drop
Yeah.
out.
Mhm.
And
As
just-
like we've talked about a little bit, like if you want to catch a spot, find somewhere where there's two spots.
Mhm.
Because if there's two of them interested,
They're going to fight.
once it's a contest, one of them has to win.
Yep.
I haven't heard that. That's a good.
Like-
that's a really good way to think
That is
about
a
it.
good- that is a good
I feel like
thought.
that's 100%. The first couple eats I ever got on a glide bait were like that. There was
Yeah.
always two of them,
Mhm.
and it was just but they both wanted it, and one of them finally would get dead red, and just
Yep.
I can't let that guy take food out of my mouth,
Yep.
and that was the decider.
Yeah, Jimbo says like wolf packs of spotted bass.
Yeah,
There's some spots we go to where you see like wolf packs of stripers. They're like
Man,
30,
I can't wait.
34, like where we're going this weekend.
Oh,
And they're
man.
like 40-pound striper.
That was
too.
one of
That's
the, one of the
thing.
coolest things I ever saw. The first fall I had the kayak, I was up on like a mud flat in about 24 inches of water.
Mhm.
And there was 24 of them came up pushing bait right under me in 2 feet. I was clear,
In your
as,
kayak.
clear as day.
Wow.
And they were just going off, just grenading bait. And they did not care that I was there. Like,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
the first thing that impresses you about like seeing striper free swimming. One, they're fast.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
ridiculously
Oh,
fast.
yeah.
Holy
Oh,
crap, they're
Yes.
fast.
Oh my God.
Ridiculously
Even when they
fast.
They're
don't,
freight trains.
yeah, it's like even when they don't
Mhm.
care and they're just moving,
they're moving.
they're so fast.
Yeah.
You could
Like-
give me a 17-1 reel and I couldn't take it away from them.
No, I've said that before too. Is there's not a reel made that will take a bait away from a striper that wants to eat.
And there's not a rod
There's
or a
isn't.
bait made big enough that they won't eat.
That they won't
and
try
there's
it.
not a rod big enough to throw the size bait that they it would take to get them to not eat it.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, if you see some of the artificials that guys throw up on the coast, like for the saltwater fish in Massachusetts and whatever, there's
Yeah,
massive,
those are
right?
huge
Oh yeah.
14,
Those are
16-inch eel imitations and
in the
stuff.
surf.
Like,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
crazy. It looks fun though.
Or you see some of these guys on some of these fisheries we go to, and they throw a skipjack back because it's not 20 inches, too
Yeah.
small. 19-inch, 3-pound skipjack, it's too small.
We need the 2-footer.
Mhm.
That's
Needs a
insane.
24-incher.
ridiculous.
So if you're wondering if your bait is too big, the answer is no.
So,
We cannot
Well-
physically throw baits too large for
Yeah.
these fish.
Mhm.
no, it's to your point, they're a calorie counter, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like he looks at food and he says, does what I take in justify what I expend?
Well, it's also a risk calculator too. Like I've got one of my favorite spots in the world. The way it sets up is there's two sides of a river's coming down this way. There's a point with a bar and a ridge, and there's 2 deep points on either side, and there's a big sunken tree right here. And I ended up figuring out that those fish, it had to come between 2 rocks, right between those 2 rocks. And you had to lay it right in front of that log jam, and they had to see it come past it. If you threw up to them and brought it back out, you'd never get a chase. And I ended up realizing that's because when you're throwing back up into this V, that bait is coming back out into more escape options. If the fish is looking at him as he follows him, the percentage chances that that fish is going to get that trout are not, they're going down. If you're fishing back up into that funnel and know where to bring it through that little escape route that looks natural, because that's the only notch in the rock that they can escape through, they annihilate it every time. You could sit there all day and not throw on that angle through that little spot and not catch fish.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think that's something we discount a lot, is like giving them food sometimes isn't enough. Like you have to make it easy.
You have to
Mhm.
feed them.
You have to feed them.
You have to
Right.
feed them.
Like they're not always going to chase. Sheffield mentioned it when he was talking about skipping docks, like that you have to be able to skip the heart of that dock, like the nastiest, best spot in that dock, like
That's exactly right.
in between the first float, in between the boat lift and all that crap, because that's where mama lives.
Mhm.
Yep.
Like
2 inches to the left or 2 inches to the right is
Not
2 inches
not
too
there.
far away.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
she's not going to put forth the effort to go that far.
That's right. You're exactly right.
To Danny's point, the coolest thing I had happen last summer was I had probably about a 12, 13 pound fish come up and grab a bait and was fighting it, and it dove. And all of a sudden my rod just loads up and starts doing this number. And second biggest fish I caught all summer ripped it off the other one's face.
And then, then
Took it away.
Just
then
took it
caught
away.
that one. Yeah.
Bent out owner ST66s, 3X
No
strong,
way.
like bent out 3/0 owner ST66s like toothpicks, just ripped it off his face.
That's insane. So Tyler's got a question there, kind of
That is
describing
awesome.
wanting to get started glide baiting, largemouth, clear lakes. You're close to the Flint. I'm not going to say names, but I think I know what lake that's going to be. So I'll start with my opinion on that. I think a largemouth tends to be, to me, from what I see, like a much more ambush oriented.
Oh,
Like they'll fill that open water niche, but I don't think they're happy to do it.
yeah, they prefer cover structure.
Mhm.
Like they
In the
want
life
to,
of
they want to
lethargy.
ambush. Yeah. A life of lethargy.
Yeah, they want to be lazy.
Exactly.
Um,
So like in that clear water, when you're probably having to run kind of something you're willing to put somewhere pretty nasty and to show them that big profile, like what are you guys thinking? Kind of where's the first place your mind goes?
a bait that can transition speeds and being able to hop in and out of speeds. Obviously lakes and largemouth, there are a ton of guys that are better than me at that. I dabble in it. I feel capable of it. But in that situation, especially the way the lakes lay out down there, a lot flatter, not with nearly as many depth breaks as we have here, very steep.
The grass.
I would
beds kind of
probably
replace
favor a
that.
slower presentation until you start calling them up and really let it kind of simmer, when you glide it towards structure. I mean,
Mhm.
just if you think you're letting it hang in the corner long enough, let it hang there longer and then zip it back across, real quick change of speeds. As
So
far as
it's-
shoalies go, I'd fish it like a jerk bait. I'd find a bait like that G-Rat,
something
Sneaky Pete.
real responsive
Yeah.
that you can just pop.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
They're very responsive to that
So-
kind of retrieve.
See, I found that with the G-Rat baits is like you can make them do a lot. You
Mhm.
got to fiddle,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mhm.
Because the first glide bait I started with, and I would say like everybody's like the little Tykes glide bait is probably the S Waver
Oh,
168.
yeah. Everybody's got that.
Everybody uses the S Waver as their first glide bait. I
Like-
feel like that's like your
I
intro.
remember fooling around with those in the Chattahoochee.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, and I love to throw an S Waver. I've caught a lot of fish on them now. And that's kind of where I got my confidence to throw big baits.
Mhm.
And you start throwing like the G-Rat, it's like it's a lot more responsive.
Mhm.
And I think that's when you have to start being like more experimental, right?
Mhm.
And it's just, if you want to go in on that, just kind of your modifications or kind of when you throw a bait and you start to work it, like where do you start to kind of decide, how does this work for me? How does this fit my style?
One of the things I hear most of the older guys say that have been swim baiting for a really long time is you need a foundation in conventional fishing so you can
Agreed.
draw conclusions. I would not recommend anyone just jump into swim bait fishing. Are you slow rolling a bait like a spinner bait? You know, glide baits are jerk baits. That's all they are. They're giant jerk baits. So, you know, if you're a guy that likes to power fish with jerk baits, I would check out fishing with glide baits. If you're someone who likes to fish crankbaits, there's some really big, really awesome crankdowns. I've got a couple of them that are out of this world. They're cool.
They might come
Oh,
out
yeah.
in a couple minutes, too.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean,
Bring
if
him out. Bring him out.
you've got some toys, dude,
Yeah.
bring something out. Like
Well, we've got that, but Blake mentioned earlier, too. Where is the Wyowega cheese?
that's up in the fridge.
Oh, man.
If you want to go get some Wyowega, dude.
We
Alex
might have
told
to
me
do
about
that.
About the
this.
cheese.
Yes,
The cheese,
he
yeah.
did.
We're gonna have to
He
bust
did.
into the cheese here.
So when we get to halftime, we might
Go
send a
bust
runner
that
up
out.
for some cheese.
Go ham on some
Tyler,
cheese.
personally, I do not like Depth's 250s at all. I do not like them. People catch fish on them. They do not fit my personal style because they are very slow
Mhm.
and they do not. I can't make them do the things I want to make them do. They don't move fast enough and they don't corner fast enough. To do
Well,
that.
it's like the depths
Right.
is that 250 is more of an open water bait. People say that, and I've never dabbled there. I can only suppose and tell you what I heard on Tactical or whatever. But a lot of the open waters, it's like you either get them or you don't.
Mhm.
Sometimes.
Well, like Jess will tell you, a lot of times you got to burn over open water. I mean, these guys,
You do.
like
yes.
the Sebule or the sweet bait
Yeah.
bite on Lanier. These guys
Yeah.
are burning them.
Mhm.
They're coming up to get them.
They want it
I mean,
fast.
yeah,
They don't want to have to make a decision.
Mhm.
They just
I think
wanna
you're making the decision for them.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Like-
to Paul's point, you have to, you do
It's
have to
like-
kind of figure out which ones work best for you. So, I mean, just because I don't like something or Alex doesn't like something doesn't mean it's not going to be something that works best for you. So you do have to do that experimenting, do the research. Don't be afraid to try it and not like it and then sell it on Swim Bait Underground. Sure.
There you go. There you go.
make that money.
I
So
mean,
what is this we just put on the table?
this is a hoog trout. I enjoy this bait. It's kind of in between a fast and a slow glide. So
Over here.
it's
We'll
got
get that-
some,
we'll
it's
get
got
that on
some
camera
paint
one.
knocked off of it.
Woo-wee, baby.
Like-
And that's
how you
Dude.
can tell it's been worked right there with that hook rash.
Yeah.
So we were talking about this last week too. I will catch trout this size and eat them this year.
Yeah.
Like there will be a trout this size on my grill by Memorial Day. Like,
There's nothing wrong with that.
and absolutely there is not.
There is nothing
but
wrong with that.
when we talk about there's not a bait big enough, like there's not a bait big enough.
no. Mm-mm.
Like it's a good meal for me. It's a good meal for a bass. Like it's a
Exactly.
good meal for a striper.
Oh, it's snack for a striper.
He
It was a
doesn't.
snack.
He wants another one. He wants probably 2 or 3 more. What do you think, Phil?
They'll whack them.
It's just that's one of the things about glide baits that I like to look at is the construction of them because, I do a lot of fly as well as conventional stuff, and through Alex over the past year and a half too, I've gotten into the glide world. And one of the things that I've read up on and paid attention to is what people do as far as modifications or what they look at in the bait's shape and how it's put together, the construction of it. You're going to have things like the more advanced baits you'll see, they'll have a V cut right there that's a match on the top
There
and the
you go.
bottom. Some baits will have, like the Sneaky Pete, for example. This has got a very tight groove versus the Sneaky Pete, which doesn't have as tight a groove,
Mhm.
and it's got more taken off on the sides. So this is going to give that lure a much different action because you can see
It's more of a walk.
it's
Very accurate,
exactly.
yes.
It's more of a walk than a slide.
Mhm.
Mhm, mhm.
And there and that's
And the
something
best baits can do both.
the best baits can do both, but you can also look for baits that are going to apply for specific applications because that may be what the
Yes,
fish wants.
exactly.
Yeah, like I'm not going to throw the same glide bait over a 3-foot sand flat on a river, in clear water as I am in stained water over a break line.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it may have the same profile, but it's going to have a different action.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it goes back to paying attention to conditions, what your focus is for that day. So you got to be able to also evolve with it. So you may have the plans to fish a certain size bait and it may be not effective. And you can either have that choice of continuing on or going to something that's produced, depending on what you're doing. So
I think there's a good point, and that segues into something that we were talking about earlier. Wish you guys could have caught some of the 5 minutes pre-show conversation. How do you know when with the bait? And we might go around the table with that as well. You're throwing something like you want to commit to it. How do you decide the difference between it hasn't happened yet and it's not going to happen? Phil?
the way I look for it is one of the things that Alex taught me was just picking a bait and staying with it. And the first one that I got was a Hiroshima trout. I actually got two. I got the Hiroshima trout in a Tennessee shad, and then I got one that's in a bleeding rainbow trout. So it's kind of like this, except for it's got a bloodier side on it. And I have fished that specifically for probably close to 100 hours now. And I've gotten a lot of follows, but I haven't gotten the commits that I want. But I'm also there's very specific applications I'm fishing for this in. So that's going to apply a little bit differently, especially if I'm doing something for like trout versus striper versus like some big bass or something. So I know if I go down to anywhere down south, like I'm going to be okay because I've already had those follows. I believe that I have enough confidence, even though I haven't gotten a bite from the goldfish that I'm going after, I can take it to other fisheries. And because I know how that moves, I'm going to be able to apply that to those other species.
Exactly.
I think it goes back to failure.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I start with a bait or a new style of presentation, like we got really into crankdowns the last year.
Yeah.
I just put away my glide baits and started fishing crankdowns.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
A-rigs. Like I got really, really fired up over crankdowns and A-rigs this
Yes,
spring. I'm like
because-
really getting into crankdowns and A-rigs. It's awesome.
Before, you didn't think about hooking into two striper that would be 20 pounds or so a piece on an A-rig. Now it's like, why not?
Oh, it's fun.
Well, the other thing is too, like we spent so much time on a couple of these fisheries last year that those fish are not going to react the same to the glide
No.
baits as like you better be prepared to fail a lot.
Because they get smart.
You got to
And,
know
like-
everything that lure does, and it's
Mhm.
got to be unconscious. You have to know how it's moving when you can't see it. You have to have complete confidence that you can zip it across his face at an extreme rate of speed, and you're not going to blow it out. And how exactly you have to feed it some slack and do what it needs to do based on not catching that fit. Like, okay, I have not caught that 20-pound striper that's followed it.
What was this one again?
It is called a hoog trout. Hoog.
Mhm.
There you go, Tyler.
You guys should highlight that comment above that Todd Arnold made as well. This is one of the actual cool things that Todd and Alex are collaboratively talking about and
Todd!
helping out with on some really neat stuff. And this goes back to part of why,
I've just enjoyed watching it
yeah,
a
like
little bit. I've just really enjoyed his progress and what he's trying to put together.
In case you guys don't know, definitely recommend following Todd Arnold around. He is a monster with a fly rod in his hand for striper. And a lot of innovation in the fly world and in the lure world is coming out of the melding of those two disciplines. I mean, you're seeing, just like Todd say, he's dabbling with glide baits on the fly with a jerk changer, which is something that he's invented essentially.
Yeah.
And he sent me some videos of them. They're cool.
Oh,
They move
man.
real good. They move good enough to catch some big
jerk
old
changer
walleye.
is that
Yeah,
the,
He's big enough to catch some big walleye. It's good enough for me.
jerk changer, is that like the chain joint?
Yeah.
Or am I
yeah.
thinking game changer?
No, you're right.
Okay.
He's basically, that's the whole point of it. It's a melting of two lures. So he's talking about a jerk bait and a game changer fly.
So let's, Josh, if you could bring up Ron Swinford's question. I think this is a common one. Blake was asking me about this the other week. And I had a lot of trouble answering it for him to a point that I felt was satisfactory. Converting followers, and kind of again, like, when is that fish really interested? When is that fish just curious and he's going to let it go?
You're gonna give him the truth, Alex.
Or is that fish always interested?
There's two answers to this question. One, glide baits have great drawing power, so your see them to catch them ratio is not fantastic.
No.
But at the end of the day, if you're doing it right and it's the right conditions for the lure, you can be successful in terms of your end result.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest point on why people get followers and not committers is what I was talking about earlier. Think about where you're fishing it. Are you throwing up onto the point and bringing it back out to where that fish has more escape room? There's a lot of guys that, fish out west that I've talked to and had extensive conversations about theory in that regard. And they'll go power pole down their boat in 2 feet of water and stand there like the guy that's standing on the bank, because they're working that bait back up into a funnel.
Right.
And as those options of escape for that bait fish get smaller and smaller and smaller, especially with largemouth and not schooling fish, like if it's an ambush predator that's moving, that gets him fired up. And at a certain point, he's going to decide, holy crap, he can't get away. I'm going to smoke him.
Mm-hmm.
Not, holy crap, he's getting away. He's getting away. Dang it, he can go up, down, left, right, back under me. He's faster than me. I have no advantage. All right, I'm going to stop wasting energy.
So to summarize, when you're retrieving, you want to narrow the opportunity of escape for that lure. So think about when you're pulling your bait back, how you're pulling it back. Are you pulling it back against a rocky point? Are you pulling it down into a hole where it's between, some sand and rock or branches? And you want to just narrow that opportunity for that lure while you're retrieving. And also retrieve it quickly and then give it a pause as if it's going into shock. So not only do you need to think in the mind of the big fish, but also think in the mind of how the
scared little fish
is
trying to get
acting. So put yourself in that fish's head, both of them.
So it's like, I would say, to sum up, like, you don't want to just show him the bait. You want to show him the bait in a situation that gives him the advantage as much as possible.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
absolutely.
You want the primo spot, because that's where you're going to find your primo fish. And then that presentation needs to give him all the advantages that he could possibly want.
Exactly.
To get him to really convert or commit.
Yeah. And it's going to fish different too, depending on if you're in a lake or a river.
Yeah.
I mean, current
changes everything.
Current changes
everything.
Oh, yeah. That is a game changer. If you can figure out how to make these lures or flies act in current, it's going to be a little of a shock when you get into still water, but you can get so much more action out of it because of what you've had to learn to work with. Now, there's going to be a little learning curve going into that still water, but overall, you will have a very round understanding of what's going on with the bait.
The Glide Bait 180. Bring up Tatum. The Glide Bait 180. Heard a lot about the Glide Bait 180. Fact or fiction?
I've never had any luck with it.
Fiction.
It's because
no.
the other
Not-
thing
not buying
too
it.
is
No.
no,
Fiction.
if you're having that 180 like that, typically one of the things that you're going to notice is you'll cross your line over your hooks in one way, shape, or
Yeah.
form.
Have
Yeah.
you ever seen a bait fish turn around and stare a predator in the face when he's getting chased? No.
No.
Not a thing they do.
Yeah.
I think it's a clever marketing ploy by various fishing companies, personally.
The banjo minnow.
Banjo minnow.
Yeah, the flying lure, man.
Oh God, yes.
The
Concept-
BB boom.
The B.
The BB boom.
If any of you are old heads from GON, the BB boom,
The BB boom.
a classic bit of Georgia fishing lore at
That
this
is
point.
amazing. That
Well, so
made
if
me
you think
no,
about it,
no,
like
no,
I thought
no.
about the flying lure conceptually not terrible, like right.
No.
We're now fiddling a lot with soft plastics with waiting to get stuff to go backwards towards cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it looked a little ridiculous, and it totally was probably for the time, but conceptually you're like, oh yeah, well,
Well, and now you look at
see guys fiddling, oh, I got this Neko rig craw, I pop it and then it goes backwards 3 feet. It was like
what the
Well,
heck.
that's
Yeah.
rad.
Yeah.
that's right.
Did the fish eat it?
Sometimes.
Upon occasion.
Mhm. And that's, it's funny seeing the past couple of years with soft plastics. There's been a lot of, you have the good standbys. You have the traditional soft plastics, and you always will. But the innovations with some of the different bait shapes and the utilization of how it's going to hydrodynamically work underwater,
Mhm.
it's really brought a lot of changes to the plastics that I didn't think about when I was younger. And
Oh,
Yeah.
let's bring up the let's shout out G-Crack Bellows
Are you
Gill.
gonna
If
go
you-
in on
those things are
G-Crack?
rad.
Hey guys,
Those things
if you
are
haven't
rad.
used a Bellows Gill,
They
they
work.
are freaking awesome, and I absolutely love the company. It's a great group of people, and it speaking of engineering at its finest, as far as soft plastics go, never seen anything like it.
Hey Jessica,
Hey Paul,
why do you have so much faith in a G-Crack Bellows gill?
because I've caught a lot of bass on them.
Like how many?
Too many to count.
Were they big?
Not all of them.
Oh, I think what you're referring to was a tube.
Oh, was that a tube?
Yes,
No,
my
it was a
biggest
tube.
bass was on a weighted tube.
That was the coolest call to
Yeah.
get. That was such a cool call. Elaborate.
Yeah, go on.
Oh,
Tell us a
yeah,
fish
yeah.
story, Jess.
There's not
Oh my
many
gosh.
women that
So I have to be honest with you guys. Bass are not my favorite fish. I mean, they're honestly pretty low on the totem pole.
cue the angry comments. I'm gonna go
Yes.
use the restroom right now to stay away from that comment
I mean,
section.
Bring cheese
Yeah.
bring the cheese. Other than shoal
in the
bass.
fridge.
The mini fridge. Yeah.
No, bass are great. I mean, I do love largemouth bass. I mean, I grew up. The first fish I ever caught was a largemouth bass. We used to take hooks and hook them through little frogs, and
Oh yeah.
I remember jumping over this farm's fence that had cows and bulls, and I have a scar on my arm to this day from having to jump over a fence
barbed wire
after a
fence.
bull was chasing me. Yes, but I
Oh.
caught a fish, so it doesn't
No.
matter.
Now, were you supposed to be there, or
I don't think so. No, definitely not
You-
supposed to be there.
that makes it better?
Yeah.
But exactly,
That's an
it made it a lot better. But yeah, so my largest bass, I did some research, found an area close to our house that I knew had big bass in it.
And it's public. This is public.
It's
waters,
a public,
by the way.
it's a public waterway, but people don't necessarily take their kayaks in there. There are some people that take their kayaks out in there. It's not easy to do. I have to pull it up and down a hill, but you get a great workout in, along the way. But so this was one of those moments. I've been fishing in this spot for, a few months now. I've been a couple dozen times, and I literally only bring one lure. I bring my bait casting reel and a weighted tube. And, I had been here, a few times to the point where, I failed a lot of times. I figured out where some fish were. I went some days not catching any fish there, but I knew they were there. I knew there were big ones in that body of water because I had done some research. That's the thing, you guys. Do the research and you will find so much information online, and then you just have to put the time in. What is that
It's the toilet.
noise?
It's probably fine.
It's the toilet. You're fine.
You're good.
It's just the
Just
plumbing.
keep going.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
Um,
You Googled your computer.
so I
You
Googled
got
my computer.
You got some good info.
And honestly, I think this specific trip kind of ruined me because this happened like 15 minutes into me fishing, you guys. I had been to this place, several times before, and I've caught several 5, 6, 7 pound bass in this lake. And it was all 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours in, and I really feel like I earned it. So this particular fish was maybe my second or third cast in. It was in a deep water pocket along a creek channel, and I literally just casted it in, and I let it sit there, and I just twitched it.
So you're ditch fishing, basically.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
That's why they call them ditch pickles.
Ditch pickles.
So Alex has a
That's
cheese
like my
curds.
favorite term for a largemouth now.
I've been looking forward to trying that.
Yum.
Those are really dang good. I definitely got to taste them the first time I was here, and you won't be disappointed. So, but yeah, so keep going.
Through the tube.
So
Twitch the tube.
anyway, I sat in the same spot for several minutes, and I barely was twitching it back towards my kayak, and all of a sudden, so everybody catches small bass, everybody catches small fish. We all know that a small fish pecks, but a big fish hits.
All base, no trouble.
So all base, no
All
trouble.
base.
So, you might get little sassy bass, but big bass don't act sassy. They got a lot of punch behind them. And I kid you not, this thing hit like a train. I knew it was a fish. I knew what I had to do. I set the freaking hook, and I just held my rod tip, and I did not let it go. And it jumped out of the freaking air, and its belly was so golden. There's carp in this lake. I thought it was a freaking carp. And I was like, yes, I got a carp. This is freaking awesome. And then it, got to the boat. It was barely hooked. And I didn't have a net. Like, I'm in this cheap ass kayak that I've had for like 3 years. Sorry, I just cussed on
Nah,
on
you're
air.
fine.
And I get it.
Don't
to
use the biggies and they'll be good.
I get it up to the kayak. I'm like, this is a 10 pounder for sure. For sure. And it was, and the rest is history. But you guys, it wasn't anything special. I went out to go fish for like 5 or 6 hours, 15 minutes in. I hooked the sucker, called it a day, went and bought a 6-pack of beer at the gas station, and went home.
Nothing wrong with that. That's a good way to have a good fishing day right there.
That's
When
right.
I caught my PB, we had to quit afterwards too.
Yep.
And
You're
like,
done for the day.
I think
She calls Jonathan and I while we're muskie fishing.
Oh,
up in
yeah, that's
Tennessee.
right. Alex and
Johnny's just
Johnny
like
are muskie
schwacked 2
fishing.
muskie in a row.
So I FaceTime them, and they have muskie on their line. I have a bass in my kayak, and we're just FaceTiming each other. It was pretty awesome.
Actually, Johnny just popped up. He wanted to know about tuning glide
So-
baits.
Oh, there he
So
is.
I've got-
let's kind of go in reverse order here. We'll start with Michael Temples. And just kind of research basics. Where do you start? What do you look for? How do you decide like what's good and what's trash?
DNR.
Go on.
DNR and WRD. We've got some really awesome guys like Hunter, Pat Snellings used to work with them. Jeff Derniak used to work with them. They do so much research that is publicly available that you can find on Google.
Yep.
That tells you where they are.
And if you
and
can't
what
find
time
it,
of year.
you just go. You can contact the DNR,
Yeah,
and
you
they
shoot
will
them an email.
literally.
They're
Call
nice
them or message
dudes.
They
them.
like talking
Yeah.
to you because they want to get feedback from the anglers on what's going on in the fisheries.
Like, you know how I found all the muskie that I caught that first year? There was a 28-year-old spawning study that put X's on a map as to where they would be February 28th to March 15th. That was like on
Like,
page 8 of the Google search results
Mm-hmm.
where there's no other boats.
so it's like you have
That,
to go.
that kind of
You
information
may
is
have to go
generally
deep,
available.
You gotta
but
dig.
it's out there.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
You're
Like,
gonna
I
have to
literally
dig.
found X's on a map. They're going to be in this shoal, and that shoal for these 2 weeks. We observed it for 3 years straight.
So
Okay, well,
do you have
game
that?
on.
Do you have those guys in your back pocket like Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina? Like, do you have somebody that you're calling, or do you kind of your contacts are here in Georgia for the most part?
Okay.
I mean,
is
all-
this just a block of cheese? What is this?
They're cheese curds. They're cheese curds.
That's
They're delicious.
yes.
Okay.
This is a northern delicacy.
I thought it was like fried
Midwestern.
cheese at first.
No,
not
they do
like-
have
No.
them. No, it's just solid cheese. It's
All
solid
right.
cheese. I mean, I do have them in my back pocket, but I leave them alone because personally, I like the challenge of figuring it out.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
breaking down new water. That's my favorite thing to do.
That is one thing that we definitely pride ourselves on is no matter where we go, we like to go in and like to have the challenge of figuring out the water.
I think that'll be a good thing to start on out of break, I think.
For sure.
Let's go Jonathan Mills tuning glide baits. So I don't think I realized that now that I've thrown probably a half dozen different like S waivers, just kind of they're not all the same.
No.
Out of the box, not some are really sweet and some are just kind of dead. What do you look for? What's kind of your first move when you want to tune a bait? I don't know. Go in.
Just
Dive
right
in
there.
Hey, Johnny.
Well, okay, I got a couple of different baits here that I've had to tune for various reasons. There are 3 different variations of a fish everything paperweight. So you've got the standard one here. This particular one, the issue I had with it was it was riding slightly high in the water column and it was nosing up just a little bit. I mean, it still swam good, but not to where I wanted it to. And it wasn't quite swinging quite as wide as I wanted it to. So generally, when you bring in or back out the joint, which I'll show you on one of the other ones, you can affect how wide or how tight it'll
Kinda
walk.
how much you get. How much is the I was noticing with the Hoog earlier, like how much does the width of the body really affect? Like if you were just
if you were just to
look, like does a wider bait like in thickness, like
you can't tell based on appearances because of the internal weighting methods. Like this is the biggest, not the longest, but the thickest bait that I own. It's an 11-inch hero trout. It's thick.
That's a
And that is probably the most
that is solid.
That's probably the most agile bait that I own in that size class. Yes. I mean it
This
can
looks like a
transition.
great big giz.
Oh, yeah, or Skippy. Or Skippy.
Or Skippy, yeah.
Or Skippy. So the first thing I'm gonna do, especially with tuning glide baits, is I'm gonna play with different hooks. I'm gonna, add some weight. If I want to drive it a little bit deeper, I'm gonna put a little bit more weight in the front to, give it a little bit of more of a nose down attitude because they kind of drive themselves to depth. They don't inherently sink, at a very high rate of speed, or because they wouldn't be able to get the horizontal travel just based on the physics of the lure. So, and we're talking like very small amounts, like a 1/4 of a gram, a 1/2 gram. And that's pretty much where you can solve almost any issue in terms of weighting or action with a glide bait. Generally, you can get them to work down a little bit more. You can fix various things with them. The next thing I'm going to do when it comes to tuning glide baits, and I do not recommend this until you have a foundation in glide baits, and you can't get this from a lot of manufacturers, but I request all the ones that I get made by people to leave what's called this centering pin here exposed. This is a prototype XL.
It's good. There you go.
So this is a prototype, basically big version of the paperweight. And I had this centering pin here exposed. So you can just pull that out and
whole thing comes apart.
That's
awesome.
So you can twist these screw eyes. They're just like a screw, lefty loosey, righty tighty. And you can really seriously affect how the bait will swim. Like if you back it off, it'll be, in my experience, it'll be a little bit wider swing to a certain point, then the action will get really dead. And if you tighten it up, you can make it walk a little bit more. And there's kind of a sweet spot. Like if it's nosing down, you can back this top one off and kind of change the arc of the bait. If it's nosing up, you want to kind of pull it this way. If it's nosing down, you kind of want to pull it this way. And that'll even out the swim a little bit. And then if I ever happen to get, a bait that really doesn't swim, then I start like taking power drills to them and really drilling out like that weight cavity or I've got some mutilated baits, put it that way.
Yeah. I've got to ask, somebody with a swimming pool? Do you have the pool?
We have some outstanding clear Highland reservoirs here. It's great.
We do.
You can find me a lot of times at Shoal Creek, that big riprap point, throwing massively large glide baits. Fooling with them,
just testing.
Yeah, just for no reason other than to test them. It's clear water, and I love the looks that people give you. Like, even
Yeah.
people that know what's up, like, please don't worry. I have no intention of catching a fish here. Like, this will not work. Like, that's a 12-inch trout swim bait. Like, it's not happening.
So we'll go Tatum and then we'll go into break. Shoal bass. Jesse?
You know, I would like to say that I've caught a lot of large shoal bass, but I want to turn it over to Alex because I think that's more his wheelhouse as far as larger shoal bass go. I've caught a lot of largemouth, and I have caught a couple of great shoal bass. We traveled to, the Flint and freaking can't think of the name of it by the barbecue place. Shit.
No, emoji.
Okmulgee. Sorry, I've got a sailor's.
Wait. Which barbecue place? No.
Fresh Air Barbecue.
Fresh Air Barbecue.
Shout out to Fresh Air Barbecue.
You heard it here first. Fresh Air Barbecue.
Fresh Air
I think
Barbecue.
you're at like 19 3/4.
19 3/4, yeah.
At
So
least
I
it's
still
20.
have yet to get the 20-incher, but Alex has caught some pretty incredible shoal bass. He could go more into that.
And my personal best is 22. If you want to see some absolutely massive shoal bass, follow Fall Line Guide Service
Yeah.
on
Yes.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Yes.
That
Alan
dude
is
has them
incredible.
dialed. I mean, I've caught some great shoal bass, and Johnny Mills has been in the boat with me, and we've schwacked him a few times on glide baits. But actually, shaky heads with shoal bass,
They dig
Oh
them.
yeah, They
best
dig 'em.
shoal bass
Right up
fishing,
in the shoals.
best
Yep.
shoal bass fishing I ever done. Me and Johnny Mills running around with shaky heads.
Yeah,
Parked the jet boat and just
Yeah.
started wading.
yeah.
That was
hitting up the whole.
I found
shoals.
them to be a little bit like trout. As you find somewhere really nasty that it doesn't look like a fish could possibly be.
And then
they
there's
are.
12 of them.
Yeah,
There they
that's
are.
where he is, right? That was something you said. I don't know if it was on GON or it doesn't really matter where you said it. That we discount the quality of a lot of shoal bass fisheries, especially like the Hooch or I think the Chessie's got some. Where we think of them as all being kind of small fish fisheries. Do you find that to be true, false, kind of mix? Are you looking for a unicorn in some of those places? You run into a big one and there's a million small ones, or
I mean, there's something when I go looking for them, I'm looking for a unicorn one. Like they're number 3 on my list. Like I'm obsessed with
Shoal
muskie and
bass are
striper, but
beautiful.
shoal bass are like what I
Right
want to
there.
do.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
when
They're right
Yes.
there.
when I want something
Yeah.
not quite as serious, but
what's the allure? A lot of people really like shoal bass. I'm really taken with them too. So
just
They're
freaking
they're
rad.
special to our area, and
Nowhere
they're
else in the world has
beautiful.
them.
Yeah,
Nowhere.
They're
nowhere
ours,
else
right?
in the world has them. Exactly.
They're
ours.
They're
yeah.
the warmer water version and a meaner and harder fighting version of the smallmouth. And even northerners agree with that. That's the thing.
Mhm.
Northern
Mhm.
people that have caught smallmouth and shoal bass will take the shoal bass over smallmouth.
They're just
They're
beautiful.
just they're just
they're
awesome
beautiful.
fish.
There's I'm sure you've just held fish in your hand and you know they're special.
yeah,
They're just
for
cool
sure.
critters.
They
and
are.
They're
Yeah,
just cool
They're
critters.
neat animals.
Like,
That's-
I'll never forget my first brown out of the Hooch. Like, and it wasn't anything special. It was 11, 12-inch brown maybe that I caught on a
But they're
spinner.
Cool
But
critters.
That was-
it's the first one though, and it is
Yeah,
special.
it's the
what
first
makes
one.
it
It's the
cool.
first one is just perfect. Like, I hate to go social media and say, "Oh man, it was a perfect stick of butter, bro," but it was. It was just. You think of like brown trout in the dictionary. There's the picture. That was the fish, right?
Phil, we like butter. It's okay.
But
Butter.
but
And little as I know, it was going to take me probably a year to catch another one bigger than that. But it was just like that fish was just picture perfect.
there he
Man,
is. What's up,
that is
Walker?
super cool.
Yeah.
I feel like my first shoalie was like that. It's like,
Hey,
holy
Walker.
crap, finally got one of these.
But,
Yeah.
like no other like state really, or no other like.
They're only found in the Chattahoochee and the
Yeah.
Flint River.
Not
systems.
everybody
It's
gets
the
to go and fish for
Apalachicola
this
River
fish.
Basin, right?
Yeah.
Apalachicola River.
Apalachicola.
Well,
River
and like
Basin,
to the
yep.
point of what we do, like most of us don't live right next to them. Even if like you're in the greater Atlanta area, you've got
Yeah.
to drive 45 minutes an hour
to find
to get
them.
to a quality,
Yeah.
shoal bass fishery, at least that you can access by boat, or if you know someone, there's some spots you can get to in some certain spots.
There,
They're a
yes.
little bit,
Mhm.
a little
Yeah.
bit ridiculous,
Yes.
but you have to go to a difficult place to catch a fish.
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
catch them.
That's true.
You have to put the
Heavy
work
current, difficult to get there. I break more gear shoal bass fishing than I do any other kind of fishing. Just because
Mhm.
fast water, shallow water, we're running around wading out of boats. I mean,
Mhm.
If you're in a
you break
jet
stuff,
boat,
lose
yeah.
stuff.
If you're in a jet boat, you got to get on plane to get upstream. You're going to be going 20 to 30 miles an hour, and your reaction time is non-existent. So you're going to hit things. You got to be prepared.
And unfortunately, due to people moving fish around, you also know that unless we really do something about it, they're very finite.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're going
Yes.
to be
Yes.
gone. I don't
Exactly.
know that I'll be able to take my 10-year-old son and catch a pure strain shoal bass. Like, I don't know that.
Sadly to say, yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
son, but definitely not my grandson.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, there's
they'll be
The
gone.
so
the
much
spotted
hybridization.
menace.
Yeah,
Spotted
hybrid-
bass are awesome though. When they're where
They
they're
are
supposed to
fun,
be.
yeah.
When they're where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
As a spotted bass are awesome in Lanier, and everybody kind of tries to project that awesomeness everywhere else, and it doesn't really. They either don't get as big, or they take over and ruin other fisheries, and it's kind of, I don't know. It ends up being a bummer.
It does. It
So
does.
we're here at the hour 10 mark. We're halfway. So obviously, it is time, even with Danny not here, for the Fish North Georgia question of the week. And before we go into that, I'd like to just kind of bring your attention to a couple things that we have ongoing here. First is the Fishing for Warriors donation drive. Obviously, we made some pretty bold statements about our abilities to raise funds and to fully fund the Fishing for Warriors organization for the 2021 year. I believe that there was a mullet bet and also a Fish North Georgia tattoo
Oh,
laid on the line for Mr. Justin Aaron Brooks.
we
those-
got tattoos.
Tattoos.
Tattoos on the line.
Tattoos. Well, tattoos on the buttocks, as it were.
Oh.
So obviously that those efforts are ongoing. If you would like to donate, it's Fishing for Warriors. To click the donate tab and make sure that you comment FNG or Fish North Georgia with your donation so they know where it came from.
And how much longer is that running on for?
I believe that's running through the end of the year.
Well, that is good to know. So you
We
guys
will,
have plenty
we'll
of
have
time.
some further drives and some more major events, but I just want to make sure that we keep up awareness. Also, next time you come to the shop, if you can, please bring some canned goods or non-perishable foods for the Georgia Mountain Food Bank. Our friends Rebecca Thurman and Eric. Rebecca does a lot of great work with the Georgia Mountain Food Bank. They service several counties. I'm afraid I don't have the list in North Georgia, and we're proud to partner with them, and we're very happy to extend a helping hand to feed those that are less fortunate. And next time you come by the shop, bring some non-perishables, and maybe Danny will tie up a jig for you or have some other goodie.
Cool.
Yeah, because these things are rad looking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's some
Yeah,
good
those
looking
are pretty
jigs on
cool.
this table.
We've been digging on these True Grit jigs on the table for a hot minute now. Our Fish North Georgia question of the week. We would like for you guys to tell us how many species of black bass live in the state of Georgia.
No. How many are recognized?
How many recognized species of
Yes.
black bass live in the state of Georgia? So if your Google flu is strong, fire it up.
Google flu. Don't get it confused with the Kung flu. I mean, flu.
Oh, spa right off the top of
Spa's
the head.
got it.
I had hoped someone knew that.
Would
right
just
off the
know
bat.
that, like, right?
Yeah.
Yep. See, Spa, you got it, man. That was
That is
yours.
it. Get in
Yep.
touch with
And
Danny.
Boy,
I believe
howdy,
there'll
did
be
you just beat him?
a True Grit Pies pack in order for you. And
Wait, didn't he win last week?
no, Spies won last week.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had to bring him the Maxent worms at Chattooga.
Oh, yes.
And did
That's
he
right.
proceed to schwack on them?
He did not. I don't even think he threw them.
No schwacking was had.
No schwack.
Negative
There's
schwack.
lack
No
of
schwack.
lack of
Schwack.
Lack of
schwack.
schwack.
It was a schwack.
Lack of schwack.
The lack of the
I
schwack.
like that.
Schwack.
No, the lack of schwack.
Lack
Oh,
of
the lack of
schwack.
schwack.
The schwack.
I
or
don't like the
thereof.
lack of schwack. I like schwacking.
I like schwacking. Much preferred
We like
catching them.
schwickety schwacking them.
Mhm.
Schwickety
Is that
schwacking.
like swiggity swooty? Like,
It's pretty
So-
wiggity wiggity whack.
wow.
Whoa.
Whoa,
Phil.
stepping
Come
up.
on, you guys
Dang.
don't remember Kid and Play wearing their pants backwards back in the day?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody needs a reason to pick up an FX rod other than that they are awesome.
That's true.
Like,
That is very true. Those FX rods, I was lucky enough for Justin Spies to actually pull my name out, and I have one now, and I definitely have to say I really enjoy throwing that thing.
Which one did you get?
I got the 6.6 cork handled. I can't remember which one it is. There's never too much.
never too much prep.
There's never too much prep.
Weak
Now,
sauce, Seymour.
the
Weak
que-
sauce.
The question is, Seymour, is it preparation G that you're going with, or preparation 8?
Preparations A through F already taken.
Yeah.
No, we're not talking about the trout whistle.
Hey, the trout whistle is always welcome on the boat.
Is that like boat snacks?
Boat snack.
Boat snacks.
Boat
Is
snacks.
it like similar to boat snacks?
Boat snacks.
Yep,
It's one of those
boat
that
snacks.
feed the boat. Like
No
That's
bananas.
no bananas. You're not a believer in the banana.
I'm not a believer. I think that's. I'm a little bit superstitious.
If I
So-
had to catch a bass right now, I'd use a shaky head.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I am so surprised that you're all in on the shaky head, man.
Dude,
Dude, I love the
yes!
shaky head. I love the
Congratulations,
shaky head.
Alex!
I
I've
love
been
it.
trying to get him on this train for a long time.
The fishing slower train.
On the shaky head train.
yeah.
So that was actually something I thought about earlier. You've been catching some really nice fish this year, and we were talking to a guy at Chatoog after the tournament on Saturday, and he fishes Rocky a lot.
Mhm.
And we talk about Rocky a lot here. We use hallowed terms for how great Rocky is. And one of the things that he brought up was Rocky really favors slow fishermen, right? And I thought about that. Was Rocky is a largemouth fishery. Bill said earlier, largemouth, lethargic fish.
Mhm.
And then bringing it together, calorie counter,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that big largemouth, like, if you're not getting him to react, if you're fooling him, he doesn't want to expend a lot of energy. So of course you have to slow down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's part of the game. Is he says that's a big meal that I don't have to try very hard for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was it's kind of something that clicked in my head this week. What do we got? Michael Temple's best shaky head that you like. He likes the alien.
Alien head.
Are you an alien guy?
Alien head.
I've been throwing Sugar
Yeah.
Hill. Steve Pinkston of Sugar Hill Baits and also of Steve's Nuts.
That's no way.
yeah, man.
Seriously? Okay. Those things are delicious.
Steve-
Talking about boat snacks.
Yeah, Steve's an awesome dude. He's provided us with nuts on more than one occasion. I really like that shaky head. I started throwing it, and it's pretty legit.
Johnny says alien too.
Yeah,
Who
I'm
makes
right there
it?
with them.
Is that Gamma? Is it alien head?
Yeah.
I think
so.
I don't remember honestly.
I'll have to try.
No,
that
is it
then.
owner?
Is that an
I
owner?
think it is owner.
I was gonna say that, but it didn't.
I
seem
should
right.
know that.
I should know that. Too.
I don't know. I just know where they are on the shelf at Bass Pro, and I
Yeah.
grab them.
Yeah.
Grab 'em, yeah.
Like,
And
ooh,
then,
those
and then
are
on
those
the way
ones.
out,
Yep,
you grab,
grab
and on
'em.
the way out, you grab some of Steve's nuts because he's right there.
Yeah.
Steve does have some good nuts.
Dude, they are delicious.
I mean, what else is there to say?
That's the second half of the show. We can
Yeah.
be 12 years old now. So we'll restart on the show sheet. We went with big baits. We went with getting started.
Well,
Let's
we
talk-
had it. No, we had a a question.
have a question?
up here? No, that was up above where Eric was. It's further up. Can you scroll up a little bit there, Josh? Please, sir. Keep going. It was something that we were talking about. Wow, it's way up.
Yeah, no,
Keep
we're
going.
way up there now. If it
What
was-
type of research are you searching for to find some fish? Michael Temple. This is what we were talking about earlier, as far as you got to use the DNR. You got to use Google Earth. The internet is your friend. Talking to people.
Mhm.
The folks in the state, just to reiterate that is going to be the best source you can have, because all of the studies that they do, they put them into technical papers. They may not release them to the public, but it's public access. You can ask for that information.
Mhm.
So that's where you want to go to, Michael. So yeah, thank you so much, Josh. Now you can scroll on down and
go back down.
yeah, we'll get
Is
back to
that
that.
like if I want to chase the stocking truck to fish for trout?
that's fly fishing competitions. Oh, did I say that out loud?
Ooh.
Sorry.
Ooh, shots fired.
Straight to the dome.
Sorry. Yeah.
You're not a huge fly fisherman, Phil?
No, it's not that I don't have a problem with fly fishing. I have a problem with people that chase stocking trucks, and because that's not sporting, man. Let's be honest.
But
I can't lie. If I want
not
8 for the
sporting.
grill, I'm not above that.
There you go.
Like-
See, that's the thing. If you're hungry, you got mouths to feed. I get that. That's fine. It's just it's not what tickles my fancy. Put it to you that way.
But let's be real, there's some ancillary benefits upon occasion that both of us have
Oh,
experienced chasing a stocking truck.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I would love to touch on when it
Yes.
comes to big fish
Go
that most
for it.
people do not understand is, especially around here in the South, we are fishing man-made impoundments. They do not follow a rule book.
No. No,
They
don't.
habituate to what we do.
Mhm.
They know what we do.
They can time us.
They
They understand when we're coming. Sound travels 5 times better underwater than it does in the air. So your footsteps, your boat motor, your trolling motor, your radio that you're playing from the music, when you drop that tackle box in the bottom of your boat,
Your sonar.
all that they hear. They know.
like, how often have the biggest browns you've seen on the Chattahoochee been set up on spots that make no sense? From a traditional standpoint, not like what we know, but from a traditional where a trout would hold standpoint.
There has been times, but there's reasons for that though that tie into what you're saying. They habituate to what we do, and that does include not only our timing but how we utilize the river in a lot of ways.
Pressure.
Is
Mhm.
if you
Those
don't think
things know.
7.5 million people that have one major water volume of water flowing through it the way that the Hooch does not pressure and affect those fish, you're crazy. They are probably the most pressured trout fishery in the country.
Like, let me tell you, if you can catch good fish consistently around here and you are willing to drive for 2, 3, 4 hours for a weekend of fishing,
You're gonna have success.
You will
It'll
be
set you up
amazed
for
at
success.
how
Yep.
because
steel sharpens steel.
absolutely
The pressure that we have here and like how good that has made the fishermen here is unreal.
Yeah, it's a technical fishery, and basically when I started fishing with Alex, he was like, "Look, I can show you this. We can do this, but you just need to understand like a good day, maybe catching 2 or 3 fish, and maybe we'll move something over 20, maybe."
Maybe.
And I was like,
Mhm.
Maybe.
"All right, cool, let's go for it."
Mhm.
And that's just the mentality I've had. So even when I go travel to other places, and I have literally traveled coast to coast and fished from California, Nevada, Utah, East Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, Colorado,
Say
Arkansas.
Out there.
Which is by far the best. Like,
yeah.
Oh, God.
I want to go to fish. I want to fish Missouri too, because that's starting to draw me in, not only with the trout, but man, the smallmouth.
Mhm.
Oh man.
They're fun.
Some fun water out there.
It is, but yeah, even all the way up towards the Fingers Lakes in New Jersey and New York and Pennsylvania, and I've had success wherever I went because I've trusted in that simple philosophy that I know I'm gonna fail,
Mhm.
and I've just accepted it. It is what it is.
Well,
Doesn't bother me.
I mean, there's only like you go to all these places and you fish in a whole bunch of different areas with a bunch of different fish, and what is universally true? You can cover the top of the water column,
Mhm.
the middle of the water column, and the bottom of the water column,
Mhm.
and you can cover it fast or slow.
And that's it.
In each of those,
Mhm.
there's only 6 options.
Yeah.
Like you're either going to be fishing something that is heavy that you can burn fast in the middle of the water column,
Mhm.
something that's light that hangs that you can fish up high slow, or something
Mhm.
that you can fish up high fast.
Yep.
Something, like a big old Kitech on a big flashy swimmer that you're just slow rolling through the middle of the water column, like a HUD 5 or something like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Or you're banging bottom with a HUD 12, or you're
My favorite.
ripping bottom, with a flutter spoon or something like that.
Yeah.
Big like there's only so many ways to catch them.
Yeah,
and
so
that's a good point too. That just what you did is, you know, a lot of people when they get in, they can get really confused as far as, well, there's so many different things. I can fish a glide bait, I can fish a jerk bait, I can fish shaky heads and jigs, and well, shit, we got a football head jig, we've got shaky head jigs. There's all so many different things. Keep it simple.
Exactly.
That is one of the best things that you can do, is just keep it real simple. In fact, the biggest thing that I learned regarding these guys right here, get one and fish the hell out of it until you catch the fish that you want.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I still fish that hero trout, even though I'm pushing around 100 hours. But there's a purpose behind that. And it doesn't bother me. I understand the failure, but every time I have a follow, I consider that a success. Every time I pick up something different from the movement or why that fish came out and where he came from, it's a success. So when you can chunk down, just like Alex said, into, you know, 5 or 6 categories of what you're doing, it's going to help eliminate a lot of that excess. The more you can simplify, the better off you're going to be.
It makes it easier to make decisions.
It really does.
Exactly.
Really does.
It keeps your mind clearer too when you're trying to focus on your goal, and instead of, you know, reaching around for a bunch of different lures all the time. You have, you know, 3 setups for top of the water column, middle of the water column, lower of the water column, and then you just stick with those and you work with it.
Yep. And just like when Todd Arnold was on here earlier talking about the fly that he has, there's actually guys that are innovating with the flies, not only the different flies that they're tying being purpose for bass, but they're also using them in different ways to where they're taking flies. I didn't bring any with me, but they're the size of these lures that they can use for muskie. Other people will take them and they might Texas rig them or Carolina rig them. What's the difference between that and a big old plastic worm or a sluggo?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
So there's, again, it's coming back to the innovation points that we've brought up. So just,
well, it's like 2 now you hear about guys almost going backwards. Like that everyone is so obsessed with trying to catch lightning in a bottle. Like, I want the next big thing, that they're almost some of the older style things are coming back in. Like you said Sluggo. Like I remember Sluggo being a game changer when they first came out. It was like the first like real soft jerk bait, right?
I mean, it's like a whopper plopper, right? Like,
yeah.
Go on.
All right. So, I mean, most people think a whopper plopper is like new. River to Sea came up with something amazing.
Choppers have been around for ages.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been mud puppy. Like a whopper plopper is a mud puppy, which is a musky lure from like the 1930s
or 40s.
Like,
it's even
like
earlier.
it's like 100-year-old musky lure. River to Sea did not come up with anything new. They just downsized a musky bait. That's all they did. Was downsized a musky bait.
So I think there's a good segue. What are some concepts that you find carry over between species? Just some, you don't want to go universal constants because fish are weird. Like everyone has a story about they caught a big one somewhere that just it shouldn't have been
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But what are some constants that you guys find, like going between fisheries and going between species, some things that just you got in your back pocket? I'm here, I can apply this.
Well, I have something that's kind of along the lines of what you're asking, but it's actually a little bit different. So I figured something out for striper that could be applicable across species. But a lot of us, you know, we typically cast towards the bank or cast towards a rocky point. When it comes to fishing the lower water column, I'm a little more patient. I've tried to practice patience and throwing those deeper water lures. And one of those lures is a finesse. So it's a big fluke. And, you know, I typically fish from the back of the boat. So usually when we're kind of drifting down the river, I like to take the finesse. And instead of casting it towards the bank, I actually cast it perpendicular to the bank and I let it slow roll and I jerk it back. And that triggers the striper like nothing else. And I'm sure you could use that application with bass. I'm not really sure if it would go across other species, but if you are trying to target those bigger fish, especially striper, that is something different that I focused on when I was experimenting with different lures, is to cast perpendicular to the bank instead of onto it with those, you know, deeper water column lures.
give it a chance to get down and let it swing out.
Yeah,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
swing. Yep.
Swing.
The
The
swing.
swing. The
There's cer-
swing.
There is
Trout guys know about the swing.
Trout
I
Yes,
guys
they
know
do.
don't
about
know.
the
I don't
swing.
know if bass guys know
Trout
about the
guys
swing.
know about the swing. Steelhead guys know about the swing.
Tell us a little
Swing.
something about the swing. You're
Go-
all
go,
current
Phil.
fishermen.
All
Tell us
right,
about
all
the
So,
swing.
right.
so swinging, and this is something that a good buddy of mine, Captain John McCloskey, he's actually a guide both here in Georgia and also up in Alaska. But he does a style of fishing called spay, which is very specific. It's just like they're talking about. This deals with a lot of you're casting downstream, you're allowing the fly to swing through the water column and through the various parts of the river, and then to sit there. And even when it's sitting there, you can still have fish that'll come up. That's really common with what they do for steelhead. Now, have I ever steelhead fished? No. Do I want to? Yes. Why? Because it's an interesting way to fish what they're doing, and the casting it looks cathartic as heck. I mean, it looks relaxing. They're literally just doing this repetitive motion, and then they move downstream a foot or two and do the same thing. And it's a weird way that it sounds like to locate fish, but when you locate them, I mean, just it looks like pure joy for these guys that are hooking into them. So the swing is really popular in that world for things for steelhead, but it also works for striper
Mhm.
because John has done it and he's told me, and I don't doubt it. And when you think about it, there's not much difference between a 30-inch rainbow trout that's just swum up a river from the ocean that wants to spawn and a striper that is thinking the same thing, that it's swimming up a river because it
Mhm.
thinks it just came out of the ocean and
Mhm.
it's trying to go spawn.
But I mean, that's the thing that comes across species is like,
Mhm.
it's not necessarily, in my opinion, it's not any similarity between the species. It's
Mm.
the similarity between the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you have a large dying bait fish, he can't quite overcome the current.
Yep.
So he's slowly going to swing. He can't overtake it. So he's going to utilize, just like you would if you're swimming from an undertow.
Yep.
Mhm.
You're going to swim at an angle
Yep.
back into the beach to
Yep.
get to where you're safe. That fish is going to swim at an angle. And then he's slowly going to rise and slowly going to rise up to that hard barrier of the surface that
Yep.
he can't do anything about. And then schwack.
Yep.
Mhm.
And that's where the water column's compressed and he has no escape.
Right.
So yeah, the
Exactly.
swing, it's
It's
applicable
deadly.
and super deadly for any presentation. It could be a fly presentation. It could be like Jessica was saying with her presentation of casting along the bank. The other benefit of it is it could,
They good, right?
because you're trying, say you're floating down,
Real good.
you may be trying to cast into a specific position. And if you're casting 90 degrees with the bank
Mhm.
and you can't get it in there, but say you go upstream and then swing down into where that fish
Mhm.
is, that could be what changes the presentation enough.
And too, with the river, you're usually fishing in some kind of current. So if those fish are trying to look for a slower presentation, it allows you to give them that option that you otherwise wouldn't get if you were fishing how you typically would.
Yep. Absolutely.
Cool. What
Back
is the
pocket.
Red Sweaters PB? PB what?
Red
What
sweater.
species?
I got crunchy
Yeah.
or creamy.
Oh yeah.
What species?
Crunchy or creamy, right? He's asking about what peanut butter you prefer.
Oh, definitely crunchy.
Stays
So
and
it's
strikeout.
You
Crunchy
gonna
all
talk
day.
about your grouper?
I mean, it's
He likes crunchy.
crunchy. Crunchy.
Bass.
Largemouth.
I'll just run down the list, man.
Just go for it, Alex. Just tell them all.
I don't know. Largemouth would be 9.3. Spotted bass would be 22.5 inches.
That's a monster.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Shoal bass would be,
That's a monster.
shoal bass would be 22.5 inches. Smallmouth would be 21.5. Muskie at 45. Striper 31 pounds. Brown trout, I've got a couple of 30s. I don't know.
I mean, that's a bunch
That's
of big
all the
fish.
all the
There's-
bass, Alex.
There's all the
You got all
bass
the
plus a
bass.
few. Some bonus.
Smallmouth. You didn't say anything about smallmouth.
21.5.
Oh yeah, that's okay. There you go.
How heavy you figure that 22-inch spot is? The linear guy in me can't like resist asking.
Well, you just caught that a month ago or so.
I
Oh, it was a donk.
Oh, 22.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It can't not be.
It was a big fish, and I've caught. I don't know.
It
The
had
scale said it was 4.84, but I've caught bigger fish than that, or smaller fish than that said 4.84. I don't know, but it was a quality fish that I really enjoyed catching. It was
he had a huge
lengthwise
belly.
the biggest.
This guy.
Lengthwise, the biggest one I've
David.
What length versus? Sometimes that's just what you've got to record them by.
No, I mean like we're going up here to the Cumberland to catch striper, right?
Okay.
So right now, if I'm going for weight, like the same fish that I would catch right now this weekend that weighed 40 pounds would be 32 in
Right, 'cause
July.
Post,
Yeah.
Because it's
versus
dropped
pre.
all its eggs. It's
Yeah.
dropped all the high fat content. Like,
Yeah.
who is to say that that fish is bigger? I mean, personally, for me with bass, it's weight because I put a
Yeah.
lot of stock in condition.
Most definitely.
Like, for me personally, I tend to lead towards weight if it's a fish that I can weigh without hurting it.
Yep.
Mhm.
Because for me, a fish that is a higher relative weight, like Shan would say, has to take less chances. It was a more difficult fish to catch. Like if you're like a couple of these dudes out here,
Now I'm picking up what you're
I
putting
yeah,
agree.
down.
like
Now I'm
if
picking up what
you're
you're
like a
putting down.
couple of these dudes out here, like Rob Jordan, who's like schwacking 20-pound bags at spots that are puking up herring everywhere.
Yeah.
You've got
Oh.
your presentation and your
Dialed.
ability
dialed in. Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
So I don't care, if they're 18 or 21, like, if it's
Yeah.
got the weight, it's got the
That-
weight.
Yep.
That fish isn't even hungry, and you're still getting it to eat.
Yes. Yes. And he does
So-
that.
Mhm.
And he does that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
he does.
He gets them.
And just going back to even the Cumberland, that is a very unique fishery.
Yeah.
There's striper. There's 4 species of trout. You can go up in the tributaries. There's smallmouth. There's largemouth. There's spots. You go up in those tribs in, I think, in less than a quarter of a mile. When we went up, we caught largemouth, smallmouth,
Dude, those are
drum.
retarded good.
So good.
What else? Buffalo. It's just amazing how many different kinds of fish that you'll run into
Yeah.
up there. And that's just, again, proof positive with the Southeast of the variety that we have. Georgia is probably the only state where you can literally fish Gulf and Atlantic species fish. Plus you have cold water. The only thing we're missing is muskie.
And really cool lone species like bowfin.
Yes,
Mhm.
bowfin
Oh,
as
Big
well.
gar.
bowfin. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, gar. Yeah.
Big gar.
Bowfin are rad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what anyone says. Bowfin are rad.
They're so mean.
Oh, they're super sick.
They're so mean. Really, like a lot of bowfin love at the table out of nowhere.
Oh yeah, bowfin
Like,
are
off
I
awesome.
mean,
the-
they fight
off
hard
the top
and they-
rope. Like,
Well, they fight exceptionally hard, and good lord, when they hit a lure, is it violent?
oh, they mean to hit it.
They choose
Like, they
violence.
don't miss.
Oh,
They
yeah.
choose
They
violence.
They choose violence. That is for certain.
So, Mr. Spa, I believe you'd have to contact Andy to see if the store's open on Saturday. Hit him up. Fish North Georgia Facebook is probably the best way, and he'll be able to let you know whether or not they're here. I don't know. Let's get some of the muskie stuff out. Like, you got started on the muskie journey. And I think thing one for a lot of people, new species, is tackle, right? Like, how do we decide, like, to tackle up, tackle down, like, what's appropriate? Do you just Google and go with that, or kind of what's your number one resource?
Definitely go with the basics first. I mean, learn the basics no matter
Yeah.
what fish you're targeting, whether it's bass or striper or muskie. I mean, just look into the lures that most people use when they first get started. Like Alex is
Play the-
pulling out a phantom and
Play the
a
hits.
hellhound, and
Play the hits.
Play
Yeah.
the hits. Play the
so
classics.
he'll go into the different presentation styles of these lures. But yeah, I mean, stick with the basics and learn them.
I mean, for me, I looked at like, okay, this is a new species. What style of bait is well known for catching these fish that plays to a strength of mine? I fish a lot of jerk baits, glide baits, fast moving stuff. So okay, muskie eat glide baits. I mean, we're fishing for them in winter. That's traditionally a time that they eat them. So I'm going to go during a time that plays to one of my strengths, you know? So that was the biggest one for me, was finding something I could connect between the two. And the glide baits worked. And then we started getting into the big old crankbaits, and we got big ass rooster tail.
Why not?
I mean, we got big ass rooster tail.
Why would we not play Vin sevenfold going upriver at top volume? The answer is
I mean,
yes.
we may do that upon occasion.
The big ass rooster tail.
That-
Is that a technical term, big ass rooster tail?
Technical AF.
Yeah, that is.
That is a big ass
Now,
rooster.
So
did
if I
you
go to
bought that,
Canada and I'm like, I want to catch a muskie, and I'm like, yo, I want a big ass rooster tail, they're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about.
They're gonna be like
Well-
doubles or singles, baby.
Yeah, they
Mhm.
will, and they'll ask you, "Do you want a big tooth?" Because it's literally on these blades right here. It says big tooth on it. But that's, I mean, all this is a steel shank with 2 giant treble hooks and some marabou, and that's it. But this will catch muskie amazingly.
Mhm.
What's the appeal for that for them? Is it just does it fool them, or do they just think is it a pure reaction?
Pure reaction. It's a spinnerbait.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, that's all it is. It's they hunt very much like largemouth bass. They're ambush predators. They don't want to run something down like a spot. I mean, it's the exact same thing as a spinnerbait for a bass. It's the vibration, the flash, and particularly they're extremely responsive in the figure 8. Like, they're just, the continuous action of them lends itself to figure 8ing without stalling the action of the bait, so you can remain natural.
Mhm.
And that's one of the big things for them. I don't particularly enjoy bucktails. I haven't had a ton of success on them. I have them in my box,
Mhm.
but I am a big crankbait and soft-tail glide bait guy.
Mhm.
Kind of feel like between those two, you can catch them the vast majority of the year.
Okay.
Mhm.
And top water too.
yeah.
Big top waters too.
And
How
top
big?
water is always fun.
You got one, and how big?
You got a whopper plopper in there.
Like a 190?
Yeah, I mean, just the
Do they make bigger than a 190?
I think the 190 is
that's
the max.
that's a really cool one. That is a old prototype wake hater that just gets schwacked.
Oh yeah.
That looks like a striper bait.
You can work it
I would-
slower.
I
You
would
can
throw
work
that-
it slower than a redfin.
I would throw that for striper tomorrow.
They schwack it.
I would throw that for bass tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
That looks really
very
good.
fishy.
Yeah, right.
You can crank it down to like 2 feet, get real aggressive, kind of twitch it.
That's like,
pop
get
it.
that. Let's get this on camera. What is this?
That is a old
Prototype.
prototype OG waking hater.
Waking hater.
Waking
I
hater.
heart haters. So is this widely available somewhere now?
No.
no.
My heart broken
Shattered.
a little. Yeah, like check this guy out. Like,
Great
I think-
profile. Great. See,
great profile, great action. Like,
But they
Great
sim-
sound.
Great
they've
sound, stays in the
simplified
right
this
part of the
since
water
then, though,
column,
haven't
yeah.
they?
Yeah, I mean, you can get haters. He doesn't make a waking version anymore, I don't think. He makes some deep diving ones and mid diving ones that are basically like giant crankbaits. He makes one that size that you can crank down to like 22 feet
Yeah.
I like the
and bang
modified,
bottom on
that's
it.
wild.
Oh,
That
it's-
one is
it's
so
ridiculous.
dope. Yeah.
I like the modified tail too. See, that's one of the things with this world of these custom glide baits and things like this that you're seeing. This is the artistry of big baits
Mhm.
in the fishing world. Like you can look on. There's some guys
Yeah,
on.
yeah. I was like, this
Instagram.
bait is not rolling off an assembly line.
No, no.
somewhere.
I mean,
Like,
dude, you can see all like the baking soda and like baking soda and, super glue
yeah.
patches. Like, we've sanded it down.
It's a
I've
work of
drilled
art.
them out, painted
work
of art.
them. I mean,
and that's where we go back to the guy that is on here a good bit. What's his name? Fish Atlanta, the gentleman that does the high power herrings. Those are just looking at the fish. The pattern is ridiculous on those things. When you see one in person,
Mhm.
it's stunning. I mean, it literally does look like a work of art. Someone mentioned, was it on here last week that someone mentioned he did a skin mount?
yeah,
On one of those.
Yeah.
What was the deal with that?
From what I had heard, I can't be reliable on any of that. But I've heard that more than once now, that he had done some where he straight up like skinned out
A gizzard?
a
shell?
giz or whatever and actually like laminated the skin and scales onto the mold.
Oh wow.
That's
Um,
nuts.
It wouldn't
So it's-
surprise me.
it was kind of like it would be like a taxidermy, a jointed taxidermy with hooks on it.
I don't know if I can tell it, but there's a very interesting story behind the genesis of this bait. Like I've got 3 different versions.
If
of
you are
this one.
if you are allowed to tell it, and if it does not include any of George Carlin's 7 words, go in, man.
So Jess has one of these, and
And that is a
that is a
It's a
prototype
2.0.
paperweight XL 2.0.
Yeah. See, that's the normal one.
I've got
So you can
That's
see the
big boy.
size difference. Yeah.
I've got 3 different ones that are all weighted differently and have slightly different, things. And I really enjoyed talking baits and like how they work and weighting and things with the guy who makes them. And that bait was actually ripped in half with a bandsaw and re-glued with toothpicks and re-epoxied to thicken the profile of the bait to change the action.
kinda
to
make
a
it
certain
do-
degree. It was ripped in half with a bandsaw and remade.
your bandsaw.
Not my bandsaw.
Okay,
No, the guy who makes those. So
you don't know. It could be his bandsaw. People have bandsaws, Phil.
they do.
But I mean, it's dudes like it's dudes
That's
like
the
us
innovation.
playing around in their garage. I
Yeah.
mean, they're
Yeah.
ripping things apart with a
That's-
bandsaw, drilling things. I mean, we play with all
Is
these
this-
things. And completely
ultimately,
change them.
is this something that you see yourself getting into?
Yes, but not for sale.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point,
As
not
like,
as-
to coin a phrase, people like to roll their own. Like fly
Yes,
guys like to say
yes.
that. Like,
yeah, for
you,
sure.
you like to roll your own,
For
you
sure.
know?
Yep.
and I mean, to a certain extent, like I already feel like I do because not one bait that I throw has the factory action. Like
Yeah.
I've altered them
all
all
been
to
synthesized.
fit
Yep.
my fishing style. Like you
Mhm.
could get any one of these baits that are on the table, and they're not gonna
run the
swim
way
like
that you have
these
set up.
ones
Yep.
individually will because I've altered them all.
So I think there's an interesting point. We'll go around with this. Like, how do you define kind of your style of fishing? And kind of how did you get there? Like, how did you decide
It's a good one.
this is who I am on the boat? This is what I do. We'll start with Jess.
So I would say as far as conventional tackle goes, one of my go-to lures has always been a Mega Bass 110 jerkbait, RIP the Magnum. It was wonderful. But hey, we got the plus ones and the plus one juniors. Those are great too. But jerkbait fishing has always been one of my favorite styles of fishing. And I think as Alex was saying earlier, I've really carried that over into learning the glide bait and taking those skills from the jerkbait and utilizing them for the hard glide bait. And I also take those skills into the softer plastics as well. Like the Finesse or the Hutcheson, because you can still use those same motions in a soft bait and just apply them a little bit differently. So as far as foundation goes, I mean, a jig is should be
Classic.
everybody's
Yeah.
foundation as far as fishing goes. So the jig helps you with the larger soft plastics also, but the jig for sure, but the jerkbait is definitely my go-to as far as conventional tackle goes and what's helped me improve my glide bait usage.
That's kind of what got you started in like triggering that reaction.
Most
Right.
definitely. Yep.
So Alex,
I don't really know.
did you just wake up one day and I'm going to fish fast all the time?
I kind of felt like I always needed to show it to enough fish. If I showed it to enough fish, one would get stupid. There's one that wants to eat. There's always one that wants to do something
Yep.
dumb.
The percentages are in your favor
So
in
you're-
that sense.
And I
You're
need
trying-
to
You're Vegas. Like, I want to tilt the table.
I mean, it's just a percentage.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
There's only so many
Always.
places they're going to be. There's only so many structures they use. If I run and gun all these places, like if I have to throw on the same spot 47 times with a soft plastic to maybe get that fish to eat it,
Not
I don't want to do
entertaining.
it. I'd
Yeah.
rather hit 47 different spots twice and see if there's a big angry SOB that wants to come up and annihilate
eat.
something.
Right.
Yeah, that That's just
pretty
me
much it.
personally. But there's other people that want to touch and I think that's why I like the shaky head so much. Is it's like forcing me to touch every
Slow
pebble,
down.
as Mr. Payne, the shaky head guru,
Yeah.
would say,
Mhm.
feel every pebble. It
Yeah.
forces me to do that, which I enjoy.
No, I love Bill Payne, dude.
Dude, he's
So much. Just having him sit there for 2 hours and just go deep was a pleasure. Really kind of interesting
Yes.
stuff if you're willing to listen to it. Phil, I think you're interesting because you've got the crossover between the fly and the conventional.
But see, the way I look at it is I just break it down to simple. Like I fished before, but I didn't have a kind of a discipline with it until I really started putting all this stuff together after getting some direction. And the way I look at it is I'm a power fisherman and I apply that across multiple disciplines. And when I say I'm a power fisherman, I will fish a jig super fast in the sense that I'm covering water. I can fish it slow. That's not a big deal. Jerk baits, big streamers, same thing. But when you go into things like fly fishing for, where you're using specific flies, you can still power fish that, but you just have to do it in a very different way. It's going to be more about covering the water versus dissecting a piece of water. And that's something also from fishing the hooch as much as I do. That's something that you have to be able to kind of go in and out of, is you have to be able to go from being able to take that river and fish it like a lake to taking it and breaking it down into small stream sections so that you can eliminate pieces of bad water and find the fish.
Yes.
So being able to differentiate and see what the water presents to you and how you're going to be able to fish it depending on that. That's kind of where I am with it. I power fish and I try to take the water apart at the same time, as odd as that sounds.
Well, you want to hit the primo spots with your best stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think
that's exactly what I was going to say, and just touch on the point that Phil said and dissecting the water. So, and Alex actually taught me that, rivers can be very intimidating as well as lakes. I mean, put me in a freaking bass tournament and I will probably fail, but rivers, I can break them down like nothing else. And that's what you have to do. You have to put the time in. You have to hit those primo spots, like Paul was saying, the ones that you have your confidence in, and then also being confident to hit other areas that you're not thinking that there may be something, because maybe that is where the larger fish lives. And the primo spots that the people are always fishing are pressured so much that they've moved to a different area. So breaking down the water system and then kind of zoning into those spots are key.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you mentioned conditioning there. How long does it take them to get used to people and to change? Because I've seen this before happen on like green lights and stuff. Like, how long do you feel like after getting pounded in a spot, like they start to get wise?
Very quickly.
Like matter of days, matter of weeks. Like,
if that fish screws up once, he knows.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not going to do it again.
Yeah, they get wise.
He's not going to do it again.
Now, but they have done studies on fish that seeing how long their memory is. And depending on the species is literally going to depend on it. Some fish will carry memories for years. Some will only be for 3 to 6 months. Mm-hmm. So again, research.
Like I can tell you, because I got on a bite this summer that no one had really done here. And those fish had obviously not seen it at all, because like striper in this particular body of water, number one, like you don't see many that large, and they don't myrtleize artificials. Like they don't. They've seen everything. And it took them about 2 months.
It's about 8 weeks. All of a sudden,
about
it
8
just
weeks
starts tapering.
Yeah. What about you, Paul? It looks like Eric asked the same question to you that we all answered. What would it be for you?
Style-wise, I'd say that I'm more of a power guy. Like I like to put my faith in the calculation that I want to run as many good spots as I can with my best stuff as fast as I can. Mm-hmm. But lately, I'm more and more considering what we talked about earlier, especially like largemouth lakes, that go to that primo spot and slow down a bit and kind of having more faith in some of those kind of classic, like play the hits sort of techniques,
Mhm.
And not getting stuck so much and not getting kind of married to one technique or another in a given day, kind of trying to be adaptable.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Adaptable.
Adaptable.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And it's a hard thing to learn, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, it's like we
Um,
said, you get locked in on one thing and it works, but you have
Yep.
to force yourself out of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
So
But you get locked in on one thing, it works until the day you go out and it doesn't, right?
Mhm.
Yep. Oh yeah.
that's absolutely true.
And then your
And
your
then
mind is
what do you
oh,
do?
Yeah, your mind is, oh man, I was out crushing them on this a day ago, a week ago, an hour
Mhm.
ago.
Mhm.
But when you actually step back, if you look at it, and that
Something's
same
different. So
thing-
usually something's different.
well, usually something's different. But even last year, that same point in time, you were still having similar success. Aha, there's a pattern. What happens the rest of the year? How can I apply that to the pattern, the fish, the rest of the year?
Right. And then you piece it all together after so many seasons of doing that you can segment out, well, this happens to work, this part of the year, this happens to work this part of the year, but guess what? Then the next year it might change. So you get to do it all over again.
Mhm.
But that's the exciting part about fishing, is that you're always on a journey. There's always something new to learn. And, you just get to keep, building those skills up.
I mean, you never know everything, right?
Exactly.
And anybody that thinks they does or like
Yeah.
says they do, like
There's
totally wrong.
There's nothing wrong with not being the smartest person in the room,
That's right. Yep.
because that means you always got something to learn.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of something before we close.
Well, no
20
rapid fire. We ain't got
No
no
rapid- I mean-
fire.
No steak.
Oh, you know it.
No steak. We'll go around quick. 2021, we talked about kind of how everybody starts their bucket list at the beginning of the year. And we talked about road tripping and kind of, you want to find a new place, go somewhere you haven't been before, see new water. Phil, where are you headed? What are you fishing for?
Oh man, so it's dependent on water.
What's the tippy top of 2021 for you?
Well, it's going to be 2022. That's when I'm looking at doing Alaska. So with John, so
Cool.
we should all
Yeah,
look
we were
at that.
talking about that.
Yeah, John has been talking to me about that. So Alaska next year. This year
You
it's
going long rod or short rod?
all rods.
All rods.
All right.
That's what I was told. They're like,
all rods.
well, they were like, dude, you've got to bring everything up here and just do it. And we're like, okay, that's what we're gonna do. So that's definitely next year. But
Like-
this year it's really dependent on water levels of what's gonna happen with the spring and early summer rain patterns. I could be fishing East Tennessee. I could end up out in Arkansas a ton. We'll see.
In Alaska, what's number one on your list?
Arctic char.
Ooh,
Hands down.
I like that. That's
Yeah.
saucy.
They're
That's
so
nice.
pretty, dude.
They're the
Yeah.
they're one of the most beautiful fish in the world, and they taste amazing, and that's what I want to catch. Like, it would be cool to catch a 30-inch plus rainbow trout, because they do have those up there, and they basically turn into like monsters up there. They turn into the equivalency of what we have for browns down here and in
Yeah.
the white. They get super hyper aggressive, and when the salmon smolting run starts in June, there's literally balls of smolting salmon coming down the river, and they'll envelop you and be swimming all around you, and then you'll all of a sudden get punched in the leg by like a 20-pound rainbow. So there's a lot of appeal with going after big 30-inch fish like that, but the Arctic char, there's just something to it. It's
The first
gorgeous
one I
fish.
ever saw, I had a good family friend that has a couple mounted.
yeah,
I thought they were fake.
yeah, because the colors are so
I
vibrant.
was sure they were fake.
Yeah, they're incredible fish.
Incredible fish.
So-
Alex, 21. Who's on the top of the list? Where's on the top of the list?
A 40-pound striper on artificial. That is my number one goal.
And that'll go down.
Number two
Oh, yeah, well.
is a 48-inch muskie.
Muskie.
And those will both be in the wheelhouse of the Cumberland system between Kentucky and Tennessee. Both of those fish are present in that drainage. And I definitely think the best shot at a 40 is going to be the next 4 days.
So you going?
Oh yeah,
Oh, we're going.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We're pumped.
Literally.
Load
we're
up
going.
We'll be
tonight
going.
and heading out.
Yeah, my full goals for the year are I want one 24-inch Chattahoochee Brown 3 20-inch shoal bass. I want to catch 40 striper over 20 pounds on artificial, 5 of those being over 30, 1 of them being over 40, and 10 muskie with 1 over 48 inches.
Is there a checklist?
Big
Yes.
goal.
It
Yeah,
sounds like
big
there's a
goal.
checklist.
It's a
It's a
milestone
checklist.
list. Yeah, that's kind
It's
of
a
what
checklist.
I've got as well. So
I won't make them all.
no,
I
but
won't
That's what
achieve them
keeps you
all.
hungry, right?
exactly.
Yeah, like
if you
I-
don't do it, you
I
won't
won't
stay
achieve
hungry.
them all. I mean, there's a way outside possibility, maybe like blue moon.
Yeah.
But
That's what keeps you hungry. Jess?
Definitely more striper. Striper top of my list. Can't stop thinking about him. When I'm at work, I'm actually thinking about striper. So we're very excited about that this weekend. And my true number one freshwater fish love are the trout. So I caught a great 28 and a quarter incher brown last year.
No, I have not, Eric. Go ahead.
But if I could get a 24 incher on the hooch this year, it would be a blessing. We might not make it out to Arkansas this year, maybe next year. And my goal would be to get a 30 incher by next year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I would be happy to catch
30
a
inch
striped
trout.
brown
Oh
that
my
was
God.
solidly over
Phil!
It
40.
really is.
Phil's in the club.
I know. That
Yup,
was
Bill got him.
man. That was an insane fish.
That happened. Yeah.
It did.
Yeah, that did happen.
I think, Alex, did you call the shot on that?
No,
Like,
it was,
Phil was,
yeah.
Phil was
I was-
on the show,
I-
and somebody said that you were like
Yeah,
the next
I said
Actually,
you'd be
you
the
did.
next
Yeah,
person
you
to
did.
catch a
Yep.
30
And-
Yeah.
inch
and
brown
what's
out of fucking
funny is
water.
the day that I caught that fish, I was actually texting John, and he was like, "You're gonna catch a big fish today." And I was like, "It's that time."
Speak it into
It is that
existence.
time.
Yep.
Well,
speak
the
it into
last time
existence.
I had that happen when I caught my 27. The night before, I was like,
power
I'm catching a
positive
big fish.
thinking, man.
It is.
Yep.
It's power
is.
positive thinking.
It is. You just got to make it all align, and you got to
So-
put the time in to make it happen.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we'll
That's right.
we'll go around one more thing, and then we'll bring it to a close. The word that is on the show sheet more than any tonight: mentality. So we'll start with Jess. Mentality. What's that mean for you?
It kind of aligns with mindset, mind over matter. And, I'll emphasize this again. Don't be afraid to fail, because people that are successful fail more times than anyone who has ever tried. So fail forward, do your best, keep your eyes on the prize, set goals, and get them.
Alex,
Embrace the suck.
embrace. the
Embrace
suck.
the hell out of the suck.
Embrace
Yes.
the suck.
Phil, would you go with that as well?
No, I mean, that's a very valid point, but give me the question one more time for you, Paul.
So we got mentality on the show sheet. About
What does
a half dozen
mentality
times.
mean?
What is mentality for you? Just wrapped up in what we've discussed tonight.
It's how you find your happy way to be successful fishing. I mean, that's what it's come down to. The way that I fish is how I'm happy doing it. And I've been able to pass that along to other people and spread happiness. So that's a win right there.
What about you, Paul?
See, I think I would probably be in the same boat as Alex. I think there's a level of self-awareness that when you're out there and you have the goal, right? Like fun fishing is fun fishing.
Mhm.
Like that is
Oh,
what it
yeah.
is. But when you're out there and you have the goal, there's always that moment of self-doubt,
Mhm.
right? Where you, oh man, it's not going to happen today.
Oh yeah.
And it is kind of developing the self-awareness to say, hey, like this isn't real, right? And to fight through that self-doubt
Mhm.
and to
Yes.
really be like, no, like the goal is closer than it's ever been because I've worked more at it than I ever have.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly.
Even though the
Exactly.
why in the hell am I doing this question pops up.
It's always,
Especially
it's
when
always
it-
there. but-
Especially when it's 25 degrees and raining or snowing
It's-
outside.
It's just like baseball. You just can't get too high and you can't get too low.
Nope.
Like if you're schwacking
marathon,
them,
not a sprint.
if you're
That's right.
schwacking them
Yeah.
for 2 weeks, you're not as good as you think you are. And if you're not catching them for 2 weeks, you're not as bad as you think you are.
That's a great
Yeah,
way
that's
to
perfect.
You
That's
just
a
dude.
great way
you
to
just
put it.
aren't quite on them that day,
Mhm.
and you'll do better tomorrow.
And that's all good.
There it is.
Yep.
Yep.
So we all hope for a lot of tomorrows. And we're hearing about the 205 mark. I think we're going to wrap it up for the evening. Thank you guys for joining us. I want to thank Chase Epley, Cassidy Agency, NoFo Brew Co. And hey, y'all, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. Go out there. Go get them. Go fishing.
All right, guys.
Have a good night.
Have a good night,
Good night,
guys.
y'all.